Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Lettuce Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Became Batman's Successor? Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Superman and Green Lantern have apprehended Sinestro, Wonder Woman's dealt with Metallo, and Clayface is back in Arkham. John Johns, aka Martian Manhunter, mused as he gave the Watchtower's comm systems a quick go-through to be sure no other emergencies were active. Aside from a gang brawl in Bloodhaven that Nightwing and Robin were already mopping up, it was relatively quiet. Once he made sure things had settled down, he decided to do one of his favorite pastimes, people watching. He couldn't really explain it, but he found watching them go about their daily routines relaxing. The fact that they could, in spite of the monsters, supervillains, and disasters that seemed to occur almost regularly, told him the effort they made was well worth it. For now, there was one particular human that had piqued his interest, a Japanese boy named Izuku Midoriya. Innocuous as he looked, John found his mind and attitude fascinating. He was intelligent, almost dangerously so. Observant as well, if the fact that he made it a habit of taking notes about his fellow classmates was any indication. Namely because they were all metahuman, or as they insisted on being called, quirk-bearers. Midoriya, however, was what they called quirkless, a rather insulting term since metahuman abilities had become somewhat commonplace. Not having a so-called quirk was seen as a target of derision or shame, since it was considered a disability. The rant Oracle had at learning that was something of legend. While a considerable portion of abilities were somewhat obscure or minor, like able to taste with one's fingers, or glow in the dark, a few had powers that were considered worthy of letting them become crime fighters, or pro-heroes. John grimaced just thinking that. Granted, there were a few that had the League's respect. Ones like All Might or Number 13, who took the term hero seriously, helping people because it was the right thing to do, who went at it with the passion needed to ensure they could help and protect others. Sadly, they were the rare few. Most just treated it like a 9-to-5 job, chasing glory and personal gain. They were the ones the League butted heads with sometimes, seeing League members as scrubs, muscling in on their spotlights. An elitist attitude seemed prevalent among them too, believing that you had to have a quirk before you even thought of becoming a hero. It didn't need saying that this seriously rankled quite a few non-powered League members. Plastic Man had admitted that he felt a little embarrassed to be a metahuman when he first heard that, which was why John was considerably annoyed at how the boy was treated, especially by his former friend. He had peeked into the boy's thoughts a couple of times out of curiosity. What he saw impressed and scared him a little. By simple observation and deduction, he'd figured out personalities, strengths, weaknesses not just of his classmates, but the professional heroes as well. Pushed hard enough, Izuku Midoriya could easily become one of the most dangerous enemies they'd ever have. Since things had quieted down, now was as good a time as any to head down. Flash, I'm going to head down to Japan for a little while. He called out to the red-clad speedster. Have fun, Jay. Oh, bring me back some fried rice. John nodded and made his way to the teleport. 33333333333. Making sure it would land him in an unseen spot, near the local school, John ported down and quickly shapeshifted into a portly and somewhat unremarkable-looking man. A quick look around, and he headed to the street. As he rounded the corner, something lying on the sidewalk, faint wisps of smoke coming off it. Nearing it, he saw that it was a scorched notebook. The writing on the cover was damaged, but he could make out "Hero" on it. This is Midoriya's. Why is it? He frowned when he remembered the boy's worst bully could emit explosive blasts. Petty. Surprisingly, the cover had taken the brunt of things, leaving the contents mostly intact. He leafed through it and was impressed at the amount of detail he'd put into studying them, complete with sketches. As he looked through it, he found out that pro-heroes weren't the only ones to come under his analysis. Turns out he'd studied the League as well. John's eyes widened a little when he read through it. Observant was putting it mildly. Not only had he built up similar profiles of a few League members, he'd actually come close to deducing the identities of a few. In fact, he really did figure out the names of some of the original group and a couple of others. Clark and Bruce would have a fit if they saw this. He chuckled. Though Bruce would probably have a fit, then be impressed at the way Midoriya figured it out. Texas Smash. A voice roared from down the road, quickly getting Jonas' attention, followed by the rumble of a powerful shockwave. That was definitely All Might. He said to himself, shifting back and putting the notebook away before turning invisible. And if he's here, then odds are good Midoriya will have found him. He patted the book and took off in the direction of the shout. By the time he reached the spot, a noticeable section of area underneath a bridge that had been shattered, All Might was already leaping into the air. Focusing slightly, he saw he also had Midoriya on his leg, holding on for dear life. The combination was kind of amusing, aside from All Might trying to shake the boy off. John quickly took off after them in case Midoriya really did fall off. Kid's got a grip. John mused, watching Midoriya hang on until they landed on a nearby roof. When he asked if someone like him could really be a hero, he moved in a bit to listen. The desperation in his voice while he explained why was near heartbreaking. God, he's been beat into the ground so many times by almost everyone, just for not being born with a power. He also noticed that All Might seemed a little under the weather and nearly dropped his invisibility in shock when the man suddenly shrank into a skinny, almost skeletal figure. To quote Diana, "Great Hera. What happened to him?" Midoriya freaked out as well. Where'd All Might go? The deflated All Might looked at him. "I'm right here," he said, before coughing up blood. But how? The boy freaked. "I guess I better explain." He lifted up his shirt to reveal a heavily scarred area, taking up nearly his entire left side. Both John and Midoriya were surprised by the condition. The skin looked almost seared, a spider web of crack-like purple and red. Marks that radiated out from an angry, crimson wound, resembling a raised, open sore that had yet to heal. It was as though someone had driven a red-hot poker into his ribs, twisting and shifting it to rip and catch as much as possible before pulling, tearing away a piece of his soul along with the charred flesh. It was painful to look. Izuku looked like the sight alone was making him ill. For John, though, it was far more. His empath powers couldn't help but let him perceive and visualize just what had managed to inflict it, and the still lingering damage. "I never thought I'd be so glad to not have a humanoid digestive system, otherwise I'd be seeing my last meal again right now. I got this 5 years ago, facing off against a supervillain named All for One. He went to prison, but not before landing the blow that did this." All Might sighed. "Ever since then I've been on a time limit when using my power, one for all. When I hit that limit, I'm forced to turn back into the skinny guy I really am." After a moment, he put his shirt back down and looked at Izuku. "I'm gonna be honest with you, kid. Being a hero means a lot more than endorsements, fans, and flashy skills. It means willingly putting yourself out there, putting your body and life on the line to protect people. To make sure that at the end of the day, they can go home to their families and loved ones." His tone became more morose then. "Unfortunately, without a quirk, no hero association would accept you. I'm sorry, but you can't be a pro-hero if you don't have one." With that, All Might slowly headed to the stairwell. Before he went down, though, he gave him one last look. "For what it's worth, my gut's telling me you probably would have made a pretty decent one." "Midoriya," John thought, seeing the broken look on the boy's face at hearing that, along with the sensation of his world crumbling. However, he heard something else when All Might said that. It was a slight emphasis on one thing. Pro-hero. Before he could do anything, a series of loud explosions ripped through another part of town. He quickly headed over to see that a metahuman, who looked like a bad Clayface knockoff, was attempting to take over a boy's body. He recognized him as Katsuki Bakugo, Midoriya's primary antagonizer. A few other pro-heroes were there, trying to stop the metahuman, but their abilities weren't having any effect. All Might had arrived as well, but it looked like he was unable to transform just yet. Knowing there wasn't much time, John prepared to move in when Midoriya came out of nowhere. What's he doing? The pro-heroes tried to stop him, but he was going full tilt, straight towards the imitator. "Hey, ugly!" Izuku yelled, getting the mass attention before hurling his backpack into his face, not even breaking stride on his way to the captive. "You little!" the villain yelled, shaking his face from the impact. While that went down, he was already working to pull Bakugo out. "What the hell are you doing, Deku?" the blonde demanded. "What do you think?" Midoriya snapped back. "Even I could see you were hoping someone would help you. Besides, I couldn't live with myself if you died, regardless of how much a JRK you are now." "No you don't," the sludgy villain roared, forcing Izuku to jump away from a tendril-like fist. He tried to swing away again, but froze when someone else grabbed hold of his hostage. Someone he hoped he'd gotten away from. "Hang on, young man, you'll be free in a moment." All Might yelled, having somehow managed to transform. He ripped Bakugo from the villain's grip with a massive pull. At the same time, he was drawing back for a Detroit smash. Once again, the street was covered with blasted bad guy, and the crowd that had gathered cheered. 3333333333333. John couldn't help but frown. Things had begun to settle down, but the Bakugo boy was praised for supposedly fighting back, though the surrounding area seemed to have been his target instead. Midoriya, on the other hand, was giving a dressing down for risking his life. It was a bit reckless, but he was doing what heroes tended to do. He was unhurt, so that was something. Right now, both boys were being processed and questioned at the police station. Knowing they'd both be there for a little while, he decided now was the time to make his move. After all, like All Might said, they wouldn't let him become a pro-hero. They couldn't keep him from becoming a hero anyway. Switching his communicator on, he headed off to the Midoriya household. "Watchtower." The no-nonsense voice came through. He couldn't resist grinning. "Batman, it's John, just letting you know I'm meeting up with a League potential." "The Midoriya boy?" That was quick. "You're in Japan, Musatafa City to be exact, John. There's only one reason you'd be there, given the concentration of pro heroes." He tried to keep the dislike out of his voice. "Though I am curious as to why you want to recruit him." John proceeded to recount the boy's discussion with All Might, along with how he nearly rescued his classmate from the metahuman criminal. "A little reckless, but it was almost successful, given what you said." Batman responded after he was done. "And I can see where both him and All Might are coming from. Without a superpower, the pro-hero path isn't good for him, but he's shown he understands the dangers of our line of work, and I have to give him credit for sticking to his hopes. Also, I should add that he's figured out your Bruce Wayne." He almost had to shift into a mouthless form to keep from laughing when he picked up on his teammate's thought process coming to a screeching halt. The comm was silent for several seconds before, what? Among other things. Invitation to the Watchtower seconded, if only get answers. The man didn't miss a beat in his response. 3333333333333. "Oh, what is keeping him?" Inko asked, heading over when the knocking started. "I hope he's okay that I'm coming." She opened the door. "Yes, who is Dash?" She had a coughing fit as her voice caught in her throat. "A Martian Manhunter?" She yelped once she could talk again. "Good evening, Mrs. Midoriya. And please call me John. I believe we'll be on a more familiar basis soon." What do you mean?" she asked, mentally reeling from the fact that not only was a member. "Basically it concerns your son, Izuku." "Izuku? Oh no, is he hurt?" "I'll wring Katsuki Bakugo's neck if he's had a hand in it." Despite her son's attempts to hide the bullying, Inko's mom sense told her something was up, namely when she saw the looks of contempt he got from the blonde when they were in the same room. And now she wanted to punch herself for not acting the first time he tried to play Scars off as tripping on the sidewalk. "Ma'am, it's okay. It's nothing like that." Due to the height difference, he had to kneel down in order to put a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He's fine. I'm here because your son is being considered for training and eventually a possible membership in the Justice League. Mrs. Midoriya?" He didn't get to continue before Inko's eyes rolled back, and she teetered backwards in a dead faint. 333333333333333. "Oh." Inko ummed as she came to, her nose crinkling some from the smelling salts John was holding out to her. She shook her head to clear the grogginess and looked to see the superhero crouched by her. Oracle was right, these do come in handy, he said, helping her up. Why, you're real, she uttered, her voice laced with no small amount of fangirl excitement. One of the original Justice League members is in my house. She was in Mitsuki when she caught herself. Sorry, I got excited. Her face turned beet red. Well, that's adorable. Did I hear you right? Izuku is a potential for the Justice League, yes. He grinned at how excited she seemed. Oh my, this not to sound rude or anything, but why? I mean, he's been told so many times he couldn't be a hero, just because he doesn't. One word, Batman. Oh, hey, right? She chuckled. As for why, regardless of the pro-hero agency's insistence on needing powers to be one, your son has a lot of potential. From what I've seen, he has the motivation, the drive, and the knowledge of what being a hero really means. If he accepts, we can have him introduced to a few members before the end of the day. Wow. You really think he can be one? As long as he's willing to put in the effort. Now, care to accompany me in telling him? I think having his mother there will help show the offer is legitimate. Oh, sure, whoop. She squeaked when he picked her up bridal style. Where is he exactly? At the local police station. I'll explain on the way. Police seek. She held on for dear life when he took off into the air. 33333333333. That was amazing. One of the officers at the station clapped a hand on Bakugo's back. Boy's hero material, no doubt. Another looked at him with what he apparently tried to pass off as mimicking parental pride. No sheet, genius. Bakugo snorted derisively as the two cops praised him for how he handled the situation. Probably wouldn't have had any trouble if a certain quirkless hadn't gotten in the way. The second one looked over disdainfully at Izuku, who was sitting in one of the waiting area's cheap plastic chairs. Despite pretending not to listen, he fought the urge to say something uncomplimentary. It felt like school all over again. Bakugo was called the best. Izuku could see him preening at the praise, no matter how much he scowled, and he was the bottom rung. And now that All Might, someone he looked up to so much, saying he couldn't be a hero without a quirk. As the lead weight settled in his stomach, he started wondering if maybe he just wasn't meant to. Holy crap! The Martian Manhunter! Someone cried out, yanking him out of his thoughts. True enough, the unmistakable green skin and blue cape of the extraterrestrial hero stood out among the parting throng. Izuku's jaw dropped. The Justice League. Here? W.I. He got his answer when he began making his way towards them. And Bakugo, it seemed. Excuse me, young man, he said, a visible smile on his face. Told you I'd always be better than you, Deku. Bakugo sneered, walking up to meet the hero with a strut. Even the Justice League wants, what the hell? He stumbled when Martian Manhunter phased through him, not even acknowledging that he was in the way. Izuku Midoriya? John stepped up to the green-haired boy. Hey, don't you ignore me, Green Baldy. Bakugo yelled, looking like he was ready to explode the man for the slight. John, however, merely glanced back him. I don't have time for your antics, child. Child? I'll show it to you. He started, only to be steamrolled by a borderline panicking Inko. Izuku! She cried, hugging her son tightly. What were you thinking, rushing that villain like that? I know you wanted to do the right thing, despite all Katsuki's done, but what if something had gone wrong? Her hug tightened, and they could hear her fighting back sobs of worry. You could have been hurt. Or worse. Izuku looked on in surprise. Mom? When? How? John told me what happened. He saw you go in to help him and everything. That you did? He asked, looking at the man. John nodded. In fact, that's part of why I'm here. Izuku Midoriya, you are officially invited to the Watchtower as a League potential. The whole room went silent when they heard that, along with several jaws dropping. I take it this happens a lot. Inko said, looking around. You get accustomed to it. He replied. Say that again? Izuku asked, once he finally regained his voice. The Justice League wants me? What? Hell no. Bakugo snapped, storming towards them. That sheet Deku hasn't got any DMN business being a hero. Excuse me? Inko's voice was a dead calm. Care to repeat that, Katsuki? Oh crap. Izuku looked for something to get behind. Mom said. You heard me. Anger overshadowed the other boy's common sense, evident by the audible micro-explosions occurring on his hands. He's quirkless. No real hero dash. John cut him off. I'm sure Batman would have an interesting rebuttal for that. He followed by gently setting a hand on Inko's shoulder to calm her. No. I'm the one with the power. That runt. Rolling his eyes, John made a twisting gesture towards him, and they were greeted with sudden silence. Bakugo was moving, but no sound came out. I'm altering the airflow between him and us to filter out his voice. He explained, seeing their perplexed looks. Anyway, Izuku, we've seen you have potential. And while you may not be able to become a pro-hero, they have no say on you becoming a hero anyway. I can still be a hero? This is almost too good to be true. I mean, after what All Might said, I thought it was going to be a case of just not meant to be. But now a member of the Justice League is right here. The rest of what he said descended into low, rapid-fire mumbling that even John couldn't make out. Midoriya? We can continue this conversation on a more mental line. If that'll help you organize your train of thought better. I got it. He tends to do this when he gets to thinking about something a lot harder than necessary. Inko gently poked her son in the forehead. Honey, you're mumbling. Huh. Izuku blinked and turned bright red. Oh, sorry. Oh, of course I'll go. He bounced off the chair. I should probably get packed. Do I need to bring anything specific? John ticked off a couple of things. I would suggest some clothing comfortable enough to work out in at the minimum. Also, this would be a good idea as well. He handed Izuku back his notebook. I couldn't resist taking a peek. He rambled slightly, looking thoroughly embarrassed. Well, I get kind of curious about the pros and cons of their abilities. Actually, I was quite impressed by your detective work. And I have reason to believe Batman is rather keen to pick your brain as well. Really? Izuku was thoroughly at a loss for words. Unfortunately, someone else wasn't. I'm sorry, but that kid's in a lot of trouble for interfering in a hero situation. One of the cops who'd been praising Bakugo spoke up. He's lucky All Might is there, or he could have gotten the boy killed dash. He froze when Inko gave him a look that would have had the rank 1 hero quickly getting out of the way. Before she could open fire, though, John quickly chimed in. Actually, while he did put himself in harm's way, Midoriya did the right thing under the local self-defense laws. Laws which also apply to the defense of others, the very same statute that allows hero actions. And if I recall, they were never repealed nor reworded to prevent those without quirks from acting. Well, the cop faltered. It seemed apparent that he hadn't been on the job long. John, however, wasn't done yet. He turned his attention to Bakugo. Also, since you're neither a member of an approved hero group, like the Justice League, nor have you been issued a pro-hero license, you are liable for all damages your powers caused, due to the same regulations that require said license. He noticed the boy looked like he was about to blow a gasket, but wasn't worried. He was fast enough to incapacitate him before he tried something. I should also point out that part of the reason no hero could really act was because you were firing wildly in your attempt to hit your captor. And such things like that are exactly why licenses are required. I didn't need anyone's help, you green baldy. Bakugo shouted. I just needed to hit that Izuku once and he'd have been history. Oh yeah, you really had him on the ropes, Kaken. Izuku said with less than subtle sarcasm, using the old nickname that now irritated the blonde. Shut it that, or I'll... Bakugo started to lunge. He made one step when he froze as John's arm extended towards him alarmingly fast, the hand phasing into his chest. John looked unimpressed. You also now have the choice of sitting down and calmly waiting for your parents to arrive, or being visited in the ICU for an unprovoked attack on a League member. He stated dryly, "I was going after Dadash." Bakugo cut himself off with a whine of pain, his eyes widening. Ouch! And that was me flicking a muscle. By accepting the invitation, Izuku is now considered part of the League, albeit in more of an intern level. But he falls under the same protection regardless. Now, are you going to sit down? Because Flash let me test this out on him, and in his own words, getting your pectorals slapped from the inside freaking hurts. I'll sit down. He whimpered, half walking, half shambling towards a seat on the far side of the room once the hand was removed. He'll be okay, John assured the Midoriyas. I learned enough about human biology to make sure I don't do any real damage. Though he will be sore for a day or two. Now, I'll take you two home so Izuku can get ready. 33333333333. The sun was halfway setting by the time they reached the apartment. According to Inko, the Bakugos were gone already, since the police had called them earlier about their son. While Izuku went to pack, John waited outside. Well, he accepted. He said, idly fingering his communicator. Good. Batman responded over it. I'm still trying to make sense of how a 14-year-old boy was able to figure out something like this on his own. Don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to talk to him about it. Do I even want to know what you meant by that? You'll see shortly. John out. He switched it off when the door opened and Izuku emerged with a travel bag. You be good, honey, Inko said, hugging him tightly. And remember to listen to what they say. I will, Mom. Izuku hugged her back before stepping over to John. Okay, I'm ready. Fair warning, first-time teleportation can be a little disorientating. I recommend holding your breath during the shift. Okay. Izuku took a few deep breaths in preparation when they heard a voice they didn't really expect or hope to encounter again that day. You sheet loser. I thought he agreed to sit and wait for his parents. John commented, seeing the aggressive blonde running towards the apartment building. Izuku signed. When Katsuki gets himself riled up enough, he stops listening to anyone. I see. He calmly hit a switch on his communicator, signaling for the teleportation system to lock on. You have no right. With a massive blast, Bakugo launched himself at his green-haired victim, determined to punish him for daring to think he could become a hero. Unfortunately for him, both of them vanished in a plume of light, right as he swung at Izuku. The hell dash! In his shock at losing his quarry, he also forgot about his momentum, which carried him face-first into the wall. Woo! Izuku wobbled a little, having felt his very being phase through the fabric of reality. That first step's at a doozy. When his senses settled, he found himself taking in the sight of a massive room. The glimmer of metal and electronics surrounding him, along with faint murmurs of chatter from people there. Everywhere he looked, he was greeted by the sight of uniformed people operating complex machinery and computers, robots toting around equipment and crates. But most of all were the League members themselves. People from nearly all walks of life, and like John, even from other planets. Some were chatting with others, some were just passing through. A few flying through. Izuku almost had to remind himself to breathe. While he looked up to All Might, these guys weren't just experienced heroes. There was a reason people called them superheroes. Izuku, welcome to the Watchtower. John set a hand on his shoulder, looking amused at his awestruck expression. We're currently in the central hub. Unreal. He managed to get out, looking out towards the huge window that gave a view of space and the stars beyond. Izuku Midoriya? A gruff, slightly deadpan voice spoke up, snapping out of his daze. BB Batman. Izuku looked ready to hyperventilate when he saw the Dark Knight heading his way. Omanoman. The Batman is right in front of me. Hey, what's all the excitement about? A red blur zipped up, stopping beside Batman to show Flash, giving them a quizzical look. And who's the kid? Bats, I thought you said we weren't supposed to hold tours up here anymore? And the Flash too? You're like number 4 in my top 10 heroes. New recruit. Batman answered, looking to John. Still have the notebook? Only 4. Flash sulked a little. At least tell me I'm higher than Green Arrow. Wait, what do you mean, new recruit? Right here. John handed it over. Izuku blinked. My notebook? But Katsuki blew it up. Luckily, he underestimated how durable those can be. Speaking of which, the caped crusader held up said book, looking Izuku dead on. Explanation. How did you find out? Izuku gulped, thinking he'd possibly done his research a bit too well. It was no secret the man had been scary down to an art form. Location and expenses. He blurted out, panicking a little. Come again. You're based in Gotham, so that meant it had to be someone who lived there. The fact you don't hesitate to use force on crooks indicates a lingering trauma that's left a need to work out a measure of aggression, and then there's your gear. What about it? He asked, raising an eye behind his cowl. Think about it, the Batmobile, Batwing, even a high-performance boat. Not to mention your suit and the tech you use. There's no way the cost of all that wouldn't have been noticeable in your tax statements without being able to personally afford it all. So that meant you're either Bruce Wayne or you've worked for him directly, meaning him or his butler Alfred Pennyworth. The timing of the Robins appearing alongside Wayne's adopted new wards narrows it down. Not to mention the fact that between the two of you, Alfred just doesn't have the build to be Batman regularly, but it fits with the one-time Batman and Bruce Wayne were both seen simultaneously. So you're saying the primary reason you've concluded that I'm Bruce Wayne is? Expenses, yeah. Izuku nodded. I mean, the Batmobile's gotta be in the millions range. It's not that much. Batman muttered quietly. He's got you there, B-Man. Flash cackled. Heck, it's like with how you and Mr. Kent Superman dash. Wait. Batman held a hand up to stop him. Flash, contact Superman and tell him to get here, on the double. A slight grin appeared. I want to see the look on that man's face when he hears this. Oh, that's evil. Flash replied. I love it. As he sped off, John held up a finger. You know he was giggling like the Joker when he left, right? 333333333333333. When Flash said Batman wanted to see him, Clark had figured that it was something involving Luthor or another possible attack from Brainiac. Finding it was because of a 14-year-old boy from Japan, however, wasn't even on the list. Or the fact that said boy, after introductions were made, would have him do something he hadn't done since he first learned he was from another planet. Come again? He asked, wiggling a finger in his fear, much to Flash and, since she heard John's Joker comment, Wonder Woman's amusement. Izuku rubbed his arm sheepishly. Well, if you add up Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent becoming friends almost right after you and Batman resolved the conflict you two had, it makes sense. Also, I digitally altered a couple of photos to swap glasses between them and compared facial features. Wait. He looked at Batman. So it's basically your fault he figured out my identity. Not a word. Batman muttered. I'm just saying dash. Not you. He glared slightly at Flash. Hey, not saying anything. He held his hands up placatingly. Just grinning. That doesn't help. Actually, Flash. John fought back a chuckle. The speedster paled a little. You're kidding me. Izuku started up in how he looked into reports regarding how Flash's speed influenced weather patterns, except for the area located around Central City. Well, I have to head back there real quick. He had to fight harder against laughing at the way Superman clapped a hand over the man's mouth when he tried to make a distraction. Promised Mrs. Midoriya I'd give her a way to talk with him while he's up here. By the time he was out of earshot, Izuku could be heard moving to Green Lantern, and how he found him just from military records and finding his picture after hearing he'd had training prior to becoming a Lantern. Heh, I think he's going to fit right in. 33333333333. It didn't take him long to retrieve what he needed, after explaining to the technicians just why he was after a portable comm system. A quick teleport found him at the entrance to the apartment building. Before he could enter though, a booming laugh reached his ears. I am here. All Might bellowed as he skidded around the corner, only to pause when he saw who was there. And you are not young Midoriya. Awkward. Hello, All Might. John greeted him, aware of how boisterous the pro-hero tended to be. Hello, Martian Manhunter, what brings you here? He asked, settling down quickly. All Might took a moment to phrase his next question in a peaceful fashion. While he disagreed with certain aspects of the Justice League, he didn't have any major issues with them. Say, you wouldn't have happened to have seen a young boy by the name of Izuku Midoriya by any chance, would you? Yes, actually, John replied. He accepted an invitation to the watchtower. The symbol of peace looked honestly surprised. Really? Wow, bet he was excited. Heard that doesn't happen often. The man let out a deep, but brief, chuckle. You see, the thing is, I saw what he did during the villain attack, and was hoping to ask him to become my successor for one for all and dash. No. I am sorry? The blunt response caught his off guard, so he was at a significant loss for words. John's expression softened slightly. Don't get me wrong, it's admirable that you think him worthy. However, as it is right now, his body cannot contain it. The sheer amount of power one for all would have passed on would tear him apart. And, in all honesty, you lack the teaching skills to properly guide him in controlling it. While you were able to handle it from the start, that doesn't mean he will. Also, no offense, but you aren't cut out to take on a ward-like sidekick. All Might winced slightly at that. The Martian Manhunter had a point. Toshinori had never really instructed someone on utilizing a quirk, especially due to how quickly he took up his. Even Gran Torino had told him that. Well, would you at least consider letting me offer it to him after he's trained up a bit? We'll see how things go up on the watchtower. He gave a small shrug. Someone more skilled might take him under their wing first. Oh God, you're throwing him at Batman, aren't you? All Might actually felt himself pale a tad at that. The Bat was considered a little on the scary side, even among pro-heroes. Someone with no powers, yet he's studied all existing heroes to the point where he was nearly able to rescue his friends single-handedly in a plan developed mid-run? Who would you ask to bring out his potential? He attempted to come up with a counter-argument, but failed. Just don't let him be Robin, okay? He asked with a near-pleading tone. Midoriya's got the spirit to be his own hero, not the latest in a sidekick succession. Besides, I'm afraid of what would happen if he were exposed to the likes of Joker, or any of the man's personal rogues gallery. I'll see what I can do. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to give this to his mother. He held up the small case he was carrying. One thing though, I'd strongly recommend easing up on the flexing. Flex? While they look impressive, those big, excessive gestures you enjoy are putting a lot of strain on your wound. All Might froze, shock causing him to revert back to his skinny body. Am I how'd you? He sputtered, watching John head in. How the hell did he know? Unfortunately, that thought was cut off as he started hacking up blood again. Crap. And this is one of my good shirts. The Justice League routinely goes over pro-hero medical records among other things for possible members. John's voice rang out from inside the door. You were under consideration for a good while, but it was eventually decided you did more good as the #1 pro-hero than as one more super strong League member. All Might blinked, wiping his mouth. League member, that you guys considered asking me? This time he heard the response in his head. Dedicated to the well-being of civilians, giving little consideration to the glory beyond the good you can do with it, and even pushing yourself through continuous agony so others don't lose hope? In character you're an excellent fit for the League, if a bit more bombastic than the senior members sometimes like, and your powers would mesh well with several members. But, as I explained, we concluded you do more good where you are, which is why you're our main contact when we have to work with or through pro-heroes. He could only chuckle a little in response. Wow. 333333333333333. Just turn this knob until you hear the click that will activate the screen. Then just adjust the volume slide until you're comfortable with it. John finished explaining the comm system to Inko once he's setting it up for her. Oh my, she said weakly. Almost afraid to touch it. Seems so fragile. Trust me, Mrs. Midoriya, if you accidentally knocked it off the table, the floor would get the worst of it. He gave her a reassuring smile. Cyborg designed these. He even had Superman, Supergirl, and Power Girl see how far they could skip them across the Pacific. Aquaman found them about 7.5 miles off the coast. Even called from one. Oh, wow. She gave the piece of tech a surprised look. Just one thing. Depending on who he'll be training with at a given moment, Izuku may be taken out to a spot for endurance training or just because they feel he could use some fresh air. You may not be able to catch him every time you call, but I tend to monitor the communications so I should able to let him know to call you back when he gets back on board. Of course, Martins. If he'd had eyebrows, Jonas would've shot up his forehead when she hit him with a mother-style hug. Thank you, for everything. Once she let go, he gave his goodbyes and left, though he couldn't ignore the spring in his step. Times like this make the job all that worth it. 3333333333333. Izuku was still going strong when he returned, arriving just in time to hear, "And Miss Drake? You should probably look into getting a mask when you're out as Black Canary." A look at the group showed a few more members had arrived, possibly to see why some of the senior members were huddled up so oddly. And nearly all of them looked amused, gobsmacked, or a combination thereof. Even Batman. Despite his mask, some could tell he was both impressed and frustrated at how effectively the boy had sussed things out. All right, if only for security matters, I vote he be made a full league member. Batman spoke up, using his no-nonsense tone to cut through the chatter. Seconded. Superman didn't miss a beat. Flash's hand shot up. So, also, anyone else a little freaked that a kid found all that out by himself? Izuku froze. Full member. Flash just pointed at him. You're kinda scary, kiddo. Apparently that was enough to set off another bout of frantic mumbling, Superman managing to catch snippets. Dear Rao, Sun and Hail. So, how many more secret identities did he figure out just from being here and meeting the team? John asked the Dark Knight telepathically while Wonder Woman took the initiative with a hug. All of them, came the answer. John raised an eyebrow. Seriously? And several security passwords. He's already admitted that he's guessed where the Batcave is by proxy of my identity. I suspect he's also calculated the geographic locations for Themyscira and the Fortress of Solitude. He gave John a glare normally reserved for Flash when he heard the Martian applauding in his head. And how many insisted you train him? All of them. Looking at Izuku, who was currently hanging limp in Wonder Woman's arms, he noted she looked quite proud of herself. His first lesson, how to keep his mouth shut. How well do you think that'll turn out? That I'll let you know. Look on the bright side, Bruce. You're a lot more fun to be around when you have someone to train. Shut up, John. Superman tilted his head a bit. Batman. What is that? He pointed at the 30-foot-high, 100-foot by 100-foot structure resting in the Watchtower's atrium. One side had a small entrance, where Raven was calmly waiting. A labyrinth I asked Dr. Fate and Zatanna to help create for Midoriya's physical evaluation. He has to work his way through the challenges on both floors to reach the escape hatch on top. That doesn't seem too bad. He pointed at a timer that was counting down. It just went under 30 seconds. He's also on a time limit. 2.5 minutes to clear as far as he can before Raven goes after him. He tapped a button on the console. Raven, T-minus 20 seconds. This should be interesting. There was a definite hint of mirth in the normally emotionless girl's voice. Never had an actual reason to chase a boy before. Okay. Superman responded. Dare I ask what kind of challenges you've concocted for him? Instead of responding, Batman simply activated one of the screens. It revealed a dimly lit room where Izuku was in the middle of placing a trio of heavy-looking plates on a central post. Looks like he's almost finished the Tower of Hanoi room. Superman narrowed his eyes as he looked at the screen. 15, 25, and 35-pound plates? Figured I'd start light. A beep told him the countdown was over and he signaled Raven to enter. 1, 2, Raven's coming for you. The girl chanted as she vanished into the maze. So, first impressions? Well, John is right about him having a lot of potential. Just means it's going to need a lot of work to bring it out. And as much as I hate admitting it, 10 years of bullying has given him a considerable amount of endurance, as well as a relatively high pain tolerance. Tag, you lose. Yeah. They were cut off by a loud, terror-filled shriek over the comm system, followed by a thud. Raven, what happened? He passed out when I caught him. Raven responded. There was silence for a second before she spoke up again. 25-pound Hanayama puzzles? Really, Batman? Where'd you even get them? He refused to answer. 33333333333333333. I want in. Batman didn't even bother looking at Green Arrow. You want in? He repeated, managing to make it a statement and question at the same time. With training the new kid. Come on, Bats, I got nothing against metas, but these pro-hero sharks annoy me just as much as you. A nose tweaking will be good for them. Oliver moved to get in the Dark Knight's field of view. Just think of it as expanding his repertoire. He gets something for range, and you're already going to teach him how to hold his own when things get up close and personal. He gave a light-hearted scoff. Hell, wouldn't be surprised if you're already picking out a few fighting styles. Batman didn't respond for a moment, making Arrow think he wasn't paying attention. Savate de Ruse and Muay Thai. They should fit him well with the proper physical conditioning. Okay, Muay Thai I know, but savoir? French kickboxing. The original form uses knee and elbow strikes, throws, locks, and various takedowns. It should overlap well with Muay. Also considering teaching him Tunfas to augment his strikes. He turned to his fellow vigilante. You should know that you aren't the only one interested in training him. I'll primarily be working on his general combat and deduction cabalites. He glanced at a small list of names. We're going to have to work on a schedule. So, that means I can take long range? Fine, but no trick arrows until his aim is consistent. Come on. He can see the flying dash. Batman cut him off. And that's why it's, you're no fun. 3333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333333. Izuku made it to the room in question. Please wait at a bench press and your training partner will be along shortly. Okay. Dressed in the workout clothes he'd been given, Izuku responded hesitantly as he looked around. Like several of the other rooms, it had massive windows shields that looked out into space. The equipment looked familiar, though a bit on the high-tech side, except for an area in the corner that had red lights and the bizarre-looking treadmill. Batman had told him that he'd be starting his training with a workout, partly to get him started and to gauge his physical limits. Picking a bench that looked comfortable, he laid back and got under the weight handle. Nothing was on it, so he just took a minute to get comfortable. Okay, Izuku, just take a deep breath and relax. You've already passed out once when they made you a full Justice League member. He briefly froze up at that. Izuku Midoriya, the Deku, an official JL member. He still couldn't decide if he should panic or let out a whoop. Don't worry, you'll get used to it. A feminine voice chirped from somewhere near his head, followed by a head of blonde hair framing one of the cutest girls' faces he'd ever seen. A pair soft-looking pink lips and bright blue eyes greeted him. So you're the new guy? Gulpwaya, I'm Izuku Idarima, I mean Izuku Midoriya. He sputtered, face turning bright red. Supergirl? Right in one. Her smile widened. Or since you've managed to guess our identities outside work, Kara Kent. Right now, though, you get to call me your spotter. Oh, okay. He managed to get out, doing his best to not let his gaze drift to the skin-tight, curve-hugging leotard she had on. First thing you ought to know is these barbell handles are a carbon nanotube construct with a sheet metal skin. They're really light, but can hold some serious weight. This way we can make full use of the plates. That makes sense. I heard it's stronger than steel on an ounce-to-ounce basis. Now, since this is kinda my first time doing this, I'm gonna start you off slow. She picked up a couple of 25-pound weights and slid them onto the bar. Just do a couple of reps and we can see how much more to add. All right. Izuku focused on the bar as best he could, but being a teenage boy had its disadvantages. Especially when she leaned into his view. Ready? Don't worry, I keep near to catch it in case you lose your grip. Ready? He took a deep breath and lifted the weight off the rack. He didn't see what she had put on it, but while he did feel some weight, the first two were relatively light. Not bad, let's put some more on. The next few minutes followed the same pattern. He'd perform a rep or two, and Kara would apply a little more weight each time. Gradually, Izuku found himself having to put more effort into the lift, all the while trying to ignore the fact that her hips and chest were less than 2 feet from him. She seemed satisfied when he was having to exert himself to make the rep. That's pretty good. You sir most indeed lift. She laughed a little at herself before something caught her eye near his feet. Oh wow. What's wrong? Izuku asked. He got no answer, though he did see her cheeks were pinking a little. Kara? Wondering what had her attention, he looked down to see what was so interesting. The blood drained from his face when he saw. Standing proudly, was a tent in his shorts. Whether from embarrassment or panic at the thought of popping a bnur in front one of the JL's female members, plus said member was the Man of Steel's younger cousin, Izuku yelped and shot up to try and hide the problem. Unfortunately, while Kara held onto the barbell easily, he forgot it was in the path. While it was light, the handle was still pretty sturdy, and then his forehead collided with it. Consciousness was on the losing side. 33333333333333333. When he came to, his head was pounding, and a set of bright lights forced him to squint. He's coming to. He heard Batman speak, causing him to try and blink away the brightness and headache. What hit me? He asked sleepily, seeing things slowly come into focus. He was now in a medical area with Batman, Superman, Kara and John standing by his bed. Superman and John seemed a mix of amused and slightly exasperated at Kara, who was blushing hotly. Batman, however, looked contemplative. I probably should have expected this. You okay, Izuku? Kara asked. I never saw anyone react that strongly to being caught at attention. Yeah, I mean I was a teenage boy once too, so I know the feeling. Superman added. It's embarrassing, that much is true. But usually just turning around was enough. Izuku looked down at the bedsheet that had been put over him, thankful that it at least hid his still-present humiliation. Perhaps clearing the air would be prudent. John offered. Talking about your past friendly experiences would help. He then quietly sent the boy a telepathic message. It's okay, Izuku. No one's here to make fun of you. He looked at the group, fiddling with the material. Does my mom count? Wait. Kara looked dumbfounded. You're saying you haven't had any friends? What about a girlfriend? His brief silence told them everything. I used to be friends with a boy named Katsuki Bakugo until we were 4, and I was told I was quirkless. Quirk. He turned out to be one of those types, didn't he? The disgust in her voice was evident. Izuku nodded. Decided being friends with me was holding him back from his path to becoming a top hero, so he turned on me with the rest of my class. Didn't the teachers do anything? Most just pretended they didn't see anything. Are you kidding me? Kara cried out, calming down a little when Superman put a hand on her shoulder. Unfortunately, that's the standard in quirk society. John replied. The few that are unpowered are seen as contemptible. Even some with quirks that aren't seen as useful in being pro-heroes are seen with a bit of disdain. So he was treated like a leper by everyone? Kara and Superman looked ready to go hurt someone. John had a visible glower on his face, and even Batman's knuckles could be heard cracking as he tightened his fist. My mom used to have a few friends who'd come over. Izuku continued. But she told them to never come back after they started offering condolences for having a quirkless boy. Okay, that you can tell on me later, Clark, but that bullshit. Kara hollered. Where do those people get off with stuff like that? Arrogance and power trips has my vote. Batman replied. That also means that Midoriya is going to require social training as well. He looked at the others. How many female league members are in his age range? Superman's jaw was slackened considerably by the time they heard the man's plan. Let me get this straight. Your plan to deal with his inability to handle being around girls his age is to surround him with superheroines in his age range that in swimsuits and the like. He gave the man a look. Bruce, did you try Tamaranian beer again? Better friends than enemies, Clark. He replied. How many female villains have tried using SEC appeal against you? Even Flash and Lantern have had that happen. But we go with volunteers only. Kara's hand shot up so fast, there was almost a small sonic boom. I volunteer as tribute. What? Izuku yelped, looking in alarm. To help, I mean. She smiled sheepishly. I'm letting you explain that to my parents, Wayne. Clark muttered. The normally stoic hero winced enough to be visible. Thanks a lot, Kent. You sure this is a good idea? Robin asked as he and Batman took in the scene. A scarlet-faced Izuku was huddled up on the couch, with Supergirl, wearing just a t-shirt and shorts, snuggled up beside him. He looks like he's about to pass out. He needs others his own age to help him out of the social shell he's been put in. Batman replied. You aren't expected to take him on missions, just show him what being a teenager is like. Well, he really could use that. Robin admitted, seeing him looking like not only was he at a loss as to how he should act, he was borderline terrified to do anything. That was the previous day. He'd already been given a communicator so he could commute back and forth like them, and they'd gotten him a room in Titan Tower, across the hall from Cyborg, for when he stayed over. Now though, the Titans were facing something they'd never encountered before, helping another teen actually act like one. The only problem was they didn't know how to broach the subject. At least, in a way that, as Starfire put it, wouldn't make them all appear as a band of Zarbnarfs. Robin made a try at first, but he was admittedly bad at small talk. After a few attempts, he just asked if Izuku wanted to see if there was anything worth watching. Beast Boy suggested he hang around as something fluffy to see if that'd help him relax a little, but the others were worried that might send the wrong message, and possibly be seen as a tad creepy. Starfire thought baking him the Telkmerm welcome tart would help, until Cyborg reminded her the last one she made tried to mate with him. So now they were all around the TV, all of them looking like they were trying hard to think of something to say. Until Raven finally spoke. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. She sat down beside him. Midoriya, we all know your social skills are crap, but we've put up with Beast Boy for years. So you don't have anything to worry about. Right? And the teen hero in question yelped indignantly. She just smirked a bit. Because just like him, we can tell you're genuinely a good guy who just has no idea what he's doing but means well. Oh. Thanks, I think. Also, one should never face that condition, not when they are as adorable as you, new friend Izuku. Starfire joined in, causing him to freeze and go red again as she wrapped him up in a nearly crushing hug. Adorable? He squeaked. Indeed. She then held up her pet. Whatever he was called. He made some chitter of excitement to Izuku, possibly saying hi, and waved his appendage things in the boy's direction. I cannot help but think of Silky when I look your way. Izuku blinked, looking a tiny bit lost as to what exactly the alien girl meant. Thanks. And that leads us to the main deal. Raven took the seat beside him. You know I'm an empath, right? When he nodded, she continued, well, during the labyrinth I could pick up on your emotions. And while I didn't say anything then, the mix you were putting out. She slowly ticked them off, anxiety that was bordering on panic-stricken fear, a desperate hope for things work out, this time, a determination to live up to what you think everyone expects of you, and an overwhelming desire to belong. Well, somewhere. And I'm being upfront when I say that's not a healthy combination. Oh, why you felt that, huh? Izuku sighed, looking at the floor. Batman didn't really give us all the details, aside from the fact you live in a region that has a high concentration of quirk users, so it's fairly easy to guess you didn't exactly have things easy. Robin responded. He said we could ask, but to let you tell when you felt ready. Izuku wanted to ignore it, say it wasn't a big deal, but that was quickly squashed by a new part, something that had appeared when John said he was invited to the Watchtower. It reminded him that these people not only didn't care that he had no quirk, they wanted to see him reach his best, they wanted to help him become a hero. And most of all, they wanted to help repair the damage he'd gotten over the past 10 years. With that thought, he quietly mustered up what courage he could, and looked up at them. It started the day after I was diagnosed as quirkless dash. Diagnosed? They actually said that? A new voice blurted out, making him jump. You get diagnosed if you have a medical condition, not when you're a regular human. What jackass thought that was a good idea? Ooh, can I? She squirmed against the tentacles some, but to no avail. Sticky too. Izuku stared, jaw going slack some. Da-da. Raven gently patted his shoulder. Like I said, you're not the only one who has problems socializing. Right? He cleared his throat to calm himself a little. Where was I? Diagnosing? Beast Boy offered. Oh yeah, He quickly turned to the current mollusk. How are you doing that? I mean, I know you can, but how? Octopi don't even have lips. Beast Boy shrugged it, or as well as an octopus could. Between Aquilad's marine life telepathy and Raven's broad-range emotion reading, I managed to pick up a few tips. You mean you managed to just learn how to do that? I didn't know that was actually possible. He stopped when a large metallic hand gently covered his face. Dude, we can geek out over superpowers all you want later once you're comfortable enough with us to do so, down in the lab. Cyborg let go of the other boy's head. But comfort first, deal? Oh yeah, right. So, diagnosing, Robin said, visibly fighting the urge to use air quotes. Yeah. Over the next several minutes, the group listened as he recalled the class, and especially the boy he used to call his friend, turning on him for it when they learned he had no quirk. And what led to a decade of bullying. He even felt brave enough to show one of the scars on his arm he'd gotten from the blonde boy's quirk. As he reached the moment when Bakugo told him to try jumping off the school roof, he quickly realized the mood had changed considerably. Robin looked calm, but the sound of his knuckles could be heard, cracking violently. Beast Boy had spikes slowly growing from his mantle, his eyes almost pinpricks. I wonder if that punk butt explosions are stronger than my sonic cannon. Cyborg muttered to himself. Starfire looked like she couldn't decide if she was more upset or sad, and both Raven and Jinx sat there silently, eyes glowing malevolently. Izuku started to sweat, thinking he'd said the wrong thing. He slowly glanced to the door, along with any possible escape route. Raven quickly picked up on the boy's rapidly growing panic and forced her ire down. Midoriya, it's not you we're getting angry at. She took a deep breath, the glow fading. It's just we've all had similar experiences in the past, and the fact you were put through it for something a reason as petty as that sees us off, for lack of a better term? Robin added. What he said. Suddenly, she moved and clapped her hand over his mouth as he started to say something. Jinx raised an eye. Okay, why'd you do that? He was unanimously voted in as a member of the League for security reasons. Okay, and that means what, exactly? He was able to figure out everyone's secret identities based on publicly available information. And he was about to respond to what you said about us all having things like that in our past by. Robin started. Reciting it, yeah. Beast Boy whistled. And I thought Robin could get scary when he goes batty-axp. He sputtered when a cushion caught him in the face, courtesy of the boy wonder. He snort. The Titans quickly turned to Izuku when they heard that. Quick, do that again. Jinx chirped, throwing Robin another cushion, who quickly slapped Beast Boy with it. Snort ha. Oh my gosh. Jinx squealed, hugging him. That's freaking adorable. We can keep him, can't we? It took a minute or two for Izuku to regain his composure. Once he did, though, the conversation turned back to the original subject, thanks to Cyborg. Seriously, what's this Bakugo kid's beef with you that's going that far? Well, he's planning to go to the local hero school, UA High. He replied, and that he wasn't too happy to find out I'd been thinking about going myself. Said I have no business becoming. Wait, what? Robin cut him off, looking incredulous. He's in no position of authority over you. So who in the hell is he to decide if you should be allowed to try and become a hero? He sputtered. And I thought Riddler was full of himself. He wasn't always like that. Izuku said, trying to defend what little shred of his old friend possibly remained in the boy. What happened that caused him to start behaving like a Starfire tried to think of the right word. A complete prick? Raven offered. Exactly. Izuku sighed. It sort of started when it came out that I'm quirkless. Since others cheered him for having a strong one, he decided I was hindering him on what he thought was his path to being the greatest hero. Things got worse after I tried to help him once, and his pride didn't take it well. The Titans were silent after hearing this, until Starfire floated over beside him. Friend Midoriya, I do not know how to phrase this gently, but this Bakugo is acting similarly to my sister, Blackfire. She proceeded to recall how Blackfire arrived on Earth, under the pretense of wanting to spend time with her, even bringing a valuable Centauri jewel as a present. We thought that the machines that kept attacking us were enemies. Sadly, we learned that she had stolen the jewel and was being pursued by Centauri police. So that she gave you the gem so they'd? Izuku started. Yes, Blackfire intended for me to be arrested while she took my place among the Titans. She looked at Robin, along with everything else that mattered to me. Luckily we managed to convince them that they were chasing the wrong Tamaranian, and Starfire faced off against her sister before the Centauri arrested her. Robin added. Beast Boy slumped a little. Still feel kinda guilty for thinking she was so amazing. You see, friend Midoriya, when we were younger, I believed that her attitude was simply her being prickly, and the way she treated me her idea of tough love. Starfire continued. After her arrest, I came to realize that was not the case. My sister is a selfish, self-absorbed, cruel, spiteful person. She made that even more clear after she was able to return to our homeworld and overthrow the current Grand Ruler. She allowed a repulsive alien by the name of Gulgurd to set up a mock invasion fleet so I would be forced to marry him. And in return, she would get a powerful relic known as the Jewel of Karda. I challenged her for the throne and managed to destroy the jewel. She has been banished from ever returning to Tamarin. What? But how does that? Izuku paused, giving Starfire's story consideration. As hesitant as he was to admit it, Blackfire and Bakugo had some unpleasant similarities. While he wasn't as villainous, he'd been willing to try and make Izuku's life miserable over a slight to his ego. Both were convinced they were better than everyone else, and seemed to think their own interests were all that mattered. In short, he's an a-hole. Izuku blurted out loud, turning bright red when Beast Boy and Cyborg burst out laughing. And that, big boy, is your first step to acting like a normal teen. Ditch the J-Arcus. Jinx grinned, still trying to work free from the suckers. Izuku laughed slightly to himself as he looked out one of the watchtower's windows. It had been a week since then, and after that admission, he felt like a massive pressure was off him. Which was true, now that he'd finally stopped caring about Bakugo or what he thought. The stress just bled away. He felt more relaxed than he had in ever, honestly. Taking in the view? Robin asked, coming up beside him. HM? Oh yeah. He looked out over the scene. The moon was just coming into view around Earth, and Mars was visible off to the side. Heh, I know it probably sounds cliché, but that it looks peaceful from here? Robin laughed. Yeah, it's cliché, but true. Kinda helps to remind us what the League's fighting for. The two looked out over the scene before he patted Izuku on the shoulder. Come on, let's get you some practice in. I think Green Arrow's getting you started on using a bow today. Oh yeah. He'd been doing the cardio part of the workout that had been set up for him when the man said Batman had finally agreed to let him teach Izuku archery. He'd put up a convincing argument about it boosting his arsenal, and giving him some long-distance offense for when he couldn't get in melee range. The two quickly changed into karate GI pants and headed to the sparring mat. Izuku was still getting ready physically for the actual training, but they'd all agreed getting him into the mindset for it now was a good idea. The workout, while draining and leaving his whole body aching the next day, was already having an effect he could feel even if he couldn't see it yet. As he copied the strikes Robin performed, from punch to knee to elbow, he felt his body, little by little, getting stronger. They kept this up for a half an hour before Green Arrow arrived, carrying a compound bow and a quiver of arrows. There you guys are. He grinned. So, is Izuku ready to start? I think so, Mr. Queen. He looked sheepish while Robin snorted. Okay, I'll bite. What was it for me? Distinctive beard for one thing? Right, that's still not gonna let Canary shave me. Let's go ahead and hit the target range. The pair head out. Along the way, Arrow went into the speech he'd spent the day working on. Hey kiddo. One major thing you want to remember about handling a bow and arrow is, keep your cool. If you panic or let your nerves get the best of you, you'll either miss your target by a mile at best, or hit a bystander at worst. It's like with a gun, just with really big bullets. A level head'll always find the target. I haven't lost you yet, have I? Izuku shook his head. No, I think I got it. Now, the main rules for safety with a bow are pretty straightforward. When you have an arrow knocked, keep it pointed in a safe direction unless you're stopping a crook or such. Don't knock an arrow until it's clear to shoot. Avoid dry firing the bow. Releasing the bowstring without an arrow knocked, you can cause serious damage to the bow and yourself. And make sure you're aware of what's around, behind, and beyond your target. Got it? Izuku mentally noted down everything as they reached a door labeled Range Practice. Alright, since this go is to let you get a feel for actually using a bow, I got some beginner arrows and a big styrofoam slab I managed to find in a Gotham Dashta. Some people lean back or into the bow during the draw, and that can throw you off. Make sure your grip on the arrow is just enough to hold it in place for the draw, and use your back muscles as well as your arms for the draw. When you get nearly to full draw, try and squeeze your shoulder blades together to bring it into full. Keep your wrist flat and pull back with an even force. Try to keep the arrow and string as straight as you can. Green Arrow looked over his shoulder to gauge the leveling. Feel free to use the handle rim as a guide for the right position. He took a few steps back. Alright, looks good. Whenever you're ready, kiddo. Take a breath if you need to. Izuku exhaled slowly, his eyes staring straight at the red circle in the middle of the block. He was well aware he'd never get a perfect shot right now, but he'd try and get it as close as he could. And that was when he heard Starfire. Yes. Let yours stay hard. She cried. Starfire. Raven groaned. He knew he shouldn't have. He knew it, but Izuku couldn't help it. He gave the girls a quick glance, mostly in surprise at Starfire's newest cheer, and was treated to the sight of Jinx performing a stuck hip wiggle, complete with giving him a quick booty shake. Hey! He squeaked, the arrow slipping out of his grip and taking flight. It didn't hit the bullseye or the target. Instead it missed the block entirely. Heads up! Arrow yelled, ducking at the sound of a ricochet. Didn't even know training arrows could do that. Tang. Private. Who? Jinx yelped, jumping as the arrow zipped right past her. That was close. Jinx, you all, Redash, Izuku's voice tapered into a low drone at the sight of a now skirtless girl. And her lace-trimmed black cotton thong. 3-3. Izuku continued, the bow slipping away from his fingers. But, well, I had planned on him seeing these later. Really, Jinx? Raven half glared at her. What? The bat said we should help him get accustomed to girls. She grinned and gave her backside a pat. And if he can get used to this, he'll be comfortable with anything. Ukake. Arrow coughed. He patted Izuku on the shoulder and handed him the quiver. Just work on getting acquainted with it for now. Starfire Raven. Keep up the pep talk. Jinx, please get some pants. I need to see Johnny about making me forget I ever saw that. Raven, should you show Midoriya your underthing? Starfire asked, making Green Arrow walk out faster. I have noticed you are responding to him in ways similar to my early interactions with Robin. Ooh, this I gotta hear. Jinx squealed. Just put something on so he can practice. Raven said pointedly, trying to hide the red that creeped into her cheeks. Izuku, however, was jammed. 3-3. The next couple of hours were kind of a haze as Izuku remembered shooting at the target, but everything else still lingered on those panties. What is with you, Midoriya? He smacked himself, trying to put his focus back on the sandwich he'd gotten at the mess hall. Unfortunately, seeing a girl in her panties for the first time, especially a thong, and on a girl like Jinx no less, trying to just forget a sight like that was a daunting job. He was barely able to take the first few bites without the image popping back up. I'm not turning into a perv, am I? He asked himself as something red virtually phased into the seat across from him at the table. Hey, Izuku. Flash started before seeing the state he was in. Hey, you okay? Look like you just saw Lobo in a tutu. He sighed and put it down. It's hard to explain, not even sure if I should even try. Flash, however, simply gave him a knowing look. Still getting used to the girls? At the surprised look Izuku gave him, he continued. Trust me, I've been in that boat too. I may seem like the standard flirter, but that's just 'cause I've been around these gals long enough to be comfortable enough to even consider it. Throw in someone I've never met, and I'm all thumbs. Izuku was slackjacked. He'd never known that. Every time he'd seen the man, especially with a woman around, he'd shamelessly, albeit harmlessly, flirt with her, walking off with a shrug if he was shot down. To think that he'd get flustered. Of all people. Trust me, it may seem overwhelming right now, but next thing you know you'll have no problem with a girl hoping in your lap. Flash didn't even hold back a grin. Heck, you should be proud of yourself. Not every day you manage to impress a Kryptonian girl. Impress a. Izuku's face turned a shade of scarlet that would have made a Red Lantern proud, much to the speedster's amusement. Oh yeah, and speaking of impressing, Diana was talking to B-Man about joining in on your training. Something about wanting to show you how to handle opponents that are a little more on the superpowered side of things. DN.W Wonder Woman? Wonder Woman's wanting to train me. He just shrugged. What can I say? She didn't specify why, but I think you've grown on her fast. Just a heads up, if her spars with Supergirl and Power Girl are any proof, she does get a little into her spars. But as long as it's not fatal, that Amazon healing beam of hers'll fix you up easy. Heal beam? Izuku'd never heard of one of those. He'd seen reports about quirks that could cauterize internal bleeding, or even force bones back into place, but nothing like that. Yeah, she used it on Huntress after she got blindsided by a kamikaze robot a while back. Messed her up pretty good, but an hour under the beam, boom. She was good as new. Izuku stared at him, the gears visibly spinning in his head. Wonder Woman gave the newest League member a slightly befuddled stare. Could you repeat that? Didn't catch all of it. Veronikansiyo kurusi our heal beam and all might. Izuku repeated, again going at high speed. One more time. You told him about the ray, didn't you, Flash? Wonder Woman said, finding him after Izuku calmed down enough to speak clearly and explain. Come on, Diana. Flash gestured to Izuku, who'd followed her, thinking he'd picked a bad time to ask. League member or not, he's a 14-year-old kid who's just now developing the beginnings of a social life. And to be honest, sometimes you forget your sparring partners don't have Amazon-level durability. She looked ready to make a rebuttal, only to falter. Well, yes. If anything, telling him about it will, at the very least, help keep him from worrying about being holed up for weeks with a broken bone or something. Yes, but he asked me if I'd be willing to consider using it on All Might. We can't just use equipment like that, considering how most of the pro heroes see the League. Not to mention the risk of severe social upheaval that public use of the ray alone could cause. Superman added, standing nearby. Which, unfortunately, means it's for League member mentor use only, Izuku. Frankly, we have no real problem using it on him, but we can't just up and use it on him because of all that. If he came to us, then that'd be a different story. For a second, Izuku looked like he was about to go into bummed-out mode, then a glint of an idea formed. Wait, you said mentors, right? Yes. Well, All Might is the reason I wanted to become a hero in the first place, going out and helping people when I could. So, in a way, he qualifies as a mentor. Flash laughed. Gotta love a loophole. Well, him and Batman, since Bruce doesn't let being non-powered stop him, but All Might's a little more on the personable side. That and he makes it a point to smile often. The other two just stared at him, and Flash laughed louder. I know you're around, Bats. And now I get to say it, I told you dash. Finish that sentence, Wally, and I tell Manhunter who ate the last of his lemon Oreos. Okay. Barbecue-flavored nori chips, sushi rice, chicken BRST, tempura mix. Toshinori Yagi quietly read his shopping list. Wonder if I should get some pickled daikon. I enjoy it on occasion. A voice he easily recognized, but did not plan on running into, spoke up from the alley he was passing by, making him jump. Toshinori. Batman said, in his typical way of greeting someone. BB Batman. He coughed, quickly wiping the blood off his lips and looking around to be sure no one was around. What you doing here? Izuku has requested you be brought to the watchtower for special medical examination. He replied. Izuku? Believe it out, he's figured out a loophole for us to possibly fix that wound of yours. Fix it? Toshinori stared at the caped hero in disbelief. He was well aware that the man wasn't the type to lie about things like this, and the League had access to some intensely high-tech equipment, but the thought that he could be healed. What do I need to do? I'll take that as a yes. Batman quietly stepped closer and took out his communicator. John. Already locked on. Came the reply. Beaming you both aboard. 3333333333333. Ooh, that's one way to get around. Toshinori said groggily, his legs not quite wanting to straighten from the trip as he followed Batman to a curtained-off area of the medbay. Wonder Woman was already there with Plastic Man helping her get a large, slightly intimidating-looking gun mounted up. All might, I presume, she said, trying to hide the flicker of concern that appeared when she saw his gaunt form. That's me. He gave what he hoped was a friendly smile. Before we do anything, I should let you know that, while this is a more portable version, the Purple Ray is an Amazonian treasure. It's brought our warriors back from the brink of death on multiple occasions. She turned a dial on it, causing it to power up with a shrill hum. Luckily, I was able to get special dispensation to get it for League use. Another dial had the barrel light up with a deep purple glow. So, if I am to use it on you, you must dash. If it means being healed, I will gladly become your male love SLV. He bellowed, dropping to one knee while simultaneously going into muscle mode. Would you prefer master or mistress? She asked, looking extremely perplexed at what just happened. Hey, don't look a gift hero in the mouth, D. Plastic Man quipped, bending around the ray gun. Most guys would make you similar offers even if they didn't need healing. She gave him an eye roll and turned back to All Might. Actually, I'm going to need you to give an oath of silence as to how you were healed. You have it. His face turned uncharacteristically red. The offer's still on the table? Maybe some other time. After 2.5 hours under the ray, Wonder Woman finally shut it off. Dear Hera, that was a job, she said, stepping over to All Might, who was lying on the exam table. Whatever gave you that wound, it left something that was actually trying to fight against the healing. But it didn't stand a chance. So that I'm cured? He asked, not even bothering to hide the hope in his voice. She pointed to a nearby mirror. See for yourself. He quickly hopped off the table and rushed over, pulling his shirt off in the process. I. His eyes widened at the sight of fresh, unblemished skin. The scarring, lines, even the burnt outline, they were all gone. It worked. He took a deep breath, feeling himself get an even bigger inhale than normal. My lungs back, did I even have a NPL there again? His voice got more and more excited as he poked himself there. I felt that. It was then that he realized something else. He was still in muscle form, at a time where he would have been forced back to small might, and another bloody coughing fit. He didn't even feel like he was about to change back automatically. There was still one thing to check though. He quickly reverted back to normal, expecting blood. Nothing happened. Despite the lanky frame, he felt, well, healthy. Your body will recover, given time. Wonder Woman added, though you'll probably want to get clothes that fit. He stood there in silence for a minute, before he turned around, his eyes tearing up. Wonder Woman? May I hug you while I have myself a good ball? Sniffle, I so happy. No. I'm game. Plastic Man spoke up, holding his arms out. Nothing wrong with a happy cry. Midoriya. All Might's joyful bellow echoed throughout the station, making Izuku fall off his chair while he was watching John scan recent emergency notices. He barely had time to recover from it before a pair of muscular arms scooped him up in a spinning hug. Thank you, Arangidash, the man cried, spinning around like a giddy top. It took John sending him a telepathic notice that the boy was turning blue before he noticed and let go. While Izuku worked on regaining his natural complexion, All Might was literally bouncing in a giddy haze. I can change at will now. He giggled like a schoolgirl, going from muscle to skinny at almost every word. Hedekaf, that's great, All Might. He managed to get out, rubbing his side slightly. And I'm not hacking up a pint when I do. I'm just glad Wonder Woman gave me the okay to let Recovery Girl know, since she's my doctor. That and she'd flipped trying to figure out how I got better. He let out a couple more giggles before finally settling down, catching his breath a little. Heh, I needed that. I'd probably be doing similar after having a years-long hole in my torso finally repaired. Superman replied. The electric slide would definitely be involved. What? He asked, seeing the look Flash gave him. I like the dance. After a minute, All Might was back to his regular state, though he was definitely more relaxed looking. So, Midoriya. Justice League member now, huh? Mainly out of plain curiosity, what do you have planned later on? I mean, nothing personal, but it's gonna be a while before you're on the roster for the major stuff. And that'll be well past your training's actually done. Outside of patrols with another member, at least. But he's got a point. Plastic Man said, walking up with the larger man's arms and face still molded into him. Izuku scratched the back of his head. Well, I had been planning to go to UA High initially. Despite Bakugo's insistence I don't. He missed the slight frown All Might had at the name. But now that I'm in the league, that wouldn't be a bad idea. Batman spoke up, making the man jump. For one thing, a Justice League member being trained to be a licensed pro-hero would go a long way towards smoothing out relations between us and the various pro-hero organizations. On top of that, their training methods differ from ours, and that can only help you. As well as the fact that with a league recommendation, you lacking a quirk won't matter, and excelling there might change pro-hero outlooks on quirkless capabilities. Not to mention the chance for you to get some normal socialization out of it. Wonder Woman joined it, throwing Batman a glower, followed by a glance at Supergirl coming up to Izuku and handing him a water bottle. Which wouldn't be all that bad, if it wasn't for the pale blue, skin-tight, high-leg workout leotard she had on. Izuku looked ready to short-circuit when she leaned against him a little. Oh row. Superman groaned. Plastic Man nervously coughed at the sight. Okay? Aren't you worried you're going to overwhelm the poor guy? He did his best to vaguely gesture her way. That outfit looks, well, painted on. Oh, it is. She chirped. I'm wearing a C-string, though. PFFFD. The resulting spit take from Izuku was almost awe-inspiring, both in force and spread. Kara just barely escaped the full brunt. Diana looked pointedly at the aftermath. Dot and water-based paint I see. Superman double face-bombed. My parents are never going to let me hear the end of this. Actually, I'm kinda surprised you're not taking the overprotective brother route, Soups. Plastic commented. To be honest, I'm more worried for Izuku. And I promised I'd stop doing that. Kinda regretting it now. Am I missing something? All Might looked thoroughly befuddled. Diana sighed. Since he's had so little positive social interaction in his life, this is part of Batman's idea of immunizing Izuku against manipulation by villainous feminine wiles, as well as attempting to get him comfortable around girls in general. All Might was silent for a moment. I simultaneously feel immense pity and envy for young Midoriya right now. Join the club. Flash and Plastic said in unison. Dare I ask who all the members are? Flash did a quick tally. Aside from Bats and Soups, just about every male member of the league. Etrigan just thinks it's funny as hell. Will someone get Kara a robe or something? Please? Superman pleaded, hoping no one heard the slight whine in his voice. Supergirl waved it off. Nah, I'm fine like this. She wrapped her arms around Izuku, who looked like he was too scared to even sneeze. Not like I have anything to be ashamed of. That perhaps getting Jinx involved in this might have been a mistake. Batman admitted, partly to himself. Superman looked at him incredulously. You're just now thinking that? I do have one question though. All Might said. Why are the young heroines so eager and/or willing to throw themselves over Izuku? In a way, it's to be expected. Diana replied ruefully. Because he's appealing in multiple ways, including a protective instinct. Also, we Amazons are well aware of how a higher adrenaline lifestyle and higher fight-or-flight exposure leads to strongly increased energies and reproductive urges in females. She did her best to look nonchalant. And frankly, he's adorable. Okay. Superman mumbled from behind his hands. If this is to be expected, then why haven't we seen it happen before? Probably because it was never encouraged before. Batman surmised. I'm guessing my plan effectively gave them carte blanche to act on whatever attraction they had. Exactly. Izuku whispered shakily, though whatever he said was too low to make out. He gonna be okay? Cyborg asked after helping Robin get Izuku into bed. The Titans weren't sure about what happened up on the watchtower, but he was too shaky to provide any real info. Instead, he had thrown himself into his training as soon as he'd arrived back at the tower. I think so, Robin replied, giving their pseudo-teammate a concerned look before closing the door. He flat out drained himself with practice, but a night's sleep should help. We'll ask what happened after breakfast. The two left down the hall, never noticing the third figure peek out from around the corner. Izuku snored softly. Robin and Cyborg had mostly just gotten him out of his workout sweats and set him on the bed. So when the door opened again, the intruder was greeted to the sight of him sound asleep, in just his boxers. If anyone had been around, they would have heard a shuddering whisper of, mama," followed by somewhat perverted giggles. Zzzzzzzzz. And K, He muttered sleepily, cracking an eye open when he suddenly felt a weight on him. It took a moment to get used to the low light, but he was more than able to make out what, or rather who, was on him. Jinx. He squeaked, his gaze drifting to the light purple nightie that hugged her lithe figure. The material was just gauzy enough to let him see her skin, save for strategically placed embroidery that gave the illusion of modesty. A finger on his lips prevented anything else. Just hear me out. She whispered, leaning in with a hand on either side of his head, her beard just touching against his chest. I know the trouble you're having with having girls all but throwing themselves at you, and you not sure what to do. Izuku started to respond, but his voice caught in his throat when she took his hand. You know, I'd be more than happy to give you. He froze when she slipped it up under the nightie skirt, and placing it on her but, the firm cheek flexing slightly in his grip. All the lessons you'll need. He just lay there, face red and too frozen to move. The way she wiggled against his hand didn't help. At all. No pressure though. She added, gently stroking his cheek. This is all me making the offer. Just something on the table for when you're ready. She slowly slid off him and sashayed out, making sure he could see her hips popping with each step. Once she reached the doorway, she looked back at him over her shoulder. By the way, I'm not the only one who wanted to make that offer. She gave him a saucy wink. Just the only one who knew how to get away with it. With that, she blew him a kiss and slinked back to her room, leaving Izuku in a suffused daze. Hey, Izuku. Just in time for Wafwo. Beast Boy recoiled at the bleary-eyed, barely conscious look on his fellow Greenette's face. No offense, dude, but you don't look so good. Understatement. Izuku groaned, rubbing his head. Didn't get as much sleep as I thought I would last night. Oh, about what happened on the watchtower yesterday? He asked. We heard something went on, but Robin said it was best to wait till you'd calmed down some before asking. More or less. While he wasn't a fan of coffee, he took the offered mug and downed a third, grimacing a little at the taste before retelling what happened after All Might was healed up. By the time he got to accidentally washing off part of Supergirl's workout suit, the shape-shifting superhero's jaw was dangling. Do it. First Jinx, then Raven. Yeah, I've noticed how she looks at you a time or two. But now Supergirl? He let out a barking laugh. I'm jealous. Though, the laugh quickly faded when he saw the stress and confusion that had etched itself onto the other boy's face. Garfield had to remind himself that Izuku had over a decade of being more or less a social outcast, and girls interested in him was still something of an alien concept. It was then that he displayed one of his more uncommon moments of insight. Okay, well, how do you feel about it all? I mean, you don't seem repulsed by the attention. I'm not, it's just... He sighed. Don't get me wrong, all three of them are total babes, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around the idea. A girl honestly liking me? The guy my whole school called the Deku, much less 2, or even 3. And to be honest, I'm scared to death that I'll do something stupid, or accidentally make the wrong move. Oh, that's it? He quickly held up a hand. Just hear me out. You remember what Raven said, right? About how we know just how inexperienced you are. Yeah. So, we know they aren't gonna judge for mistakes. A goof or two's gonna be expected. He gulped down the rest of his waffle. If it helps, think about it from an animal perspective. You're gonna have to make a move anyway, may as well just stop thinking and do what comes naturally. The worst that can happen is you get a no, but at least you'll be able to stop worrying yourself sick about it. He leaned in a little. And judging by the way Jinx alone's been acting, no, probably isn't gonna be her reaction. Come on, Midoriya, you can do this. Izuku told himself for the 9th time. He'd been mulling over Beast Boy's advice for what felt like hours now, trying to weigh the pros and cons. Pros. He hooks up with a cute girl that actually likes him. And said girl is pretty damn formidable. And she's already let him see her almost naked, so she has to be serious. Cons. It might upset Raven and Supergirl. There was a chance Batman might not approve. And he didn't actually know what Jinx had planned, and frankly, the unknown was kind of scary. Counterpros. Jinx did say that she wasn't the only girl who wanted to make the offer, so maybe she has an idea of how to make sure it wouldn't upset them. And he doesn't really have to go forward until he's fully sure. The whole thing was originally Batman's idea, and given his personality, he was bound to have taken something like this into consideration. And like Beast Boy had said, it was always going to be scary, and he'd have to face it eventually. As the last con faded from the argument, Izuku took a deep breath and knocked. Jinx? You there? Izuku? Come on in. Been wondering when you'd come. She called. I'll be out in a second. Go ahead and have a seat on the bed. Opening the door, he stepped in and was greeted by what could best be described as a cheery goth girl's room. There were posters of goth bands like Blackbird's Hollow, intermingled with Hi Hi Puffy Ami Yumi, a handful of stuffed animals decorated a corner or two, and there was even a picture on her desk of her, Raven, and Starfire posing while wearing each other's outfits. He didn't know if he could say it out loud, but she looked pretty cute in Starfire's tank top and skirt. Sitting on the edge of the bed, he found himself not feeling quite as nervous as he thought he'd be. A few seconds later, the bathroom door opened, getting his attention. She must have been Chang-dashed. His brain partially shut down. Enjoy the view, Zuzu? She asked playfully, wearing nothing but a small towel around her waist, tied just so to show off a lot of leg. Her hair, still wet, was draped over her biarts, providing Izuku with a sight he thought you'd only see in Tai. I. He stammered, unable to tear his eyes away from the sight as she slowly strutted towards him. The stammer shifted into a surprised squawk when she sat down, straddling his lap. He gulped when he was able to feel that the towel really was all she had on. Remember, she said, leaning in until their noses were touching, and he could smell the apple cinnamon toothpaste she'd used. This is all me. And so is this. She slipped her arms around Izuku's head and pulled him in for a kiss. She's kissing. A girl's kissing me. At first, he tensed up utterly, but as the kiss continued, and she pressed against him, he started gradually relaxing. Her lips are really soft. Should I? He thought, before remembering what BB had said, just do it. Hesitating for just a second, he wrapped his arms around her waist, his fingers sliding over the silky skin. The purr she let out told him that was the right choice. After a moment, she slowly pulled away, liking her lips slightly. One down. And one to go. Raven spoke up from behind, slipping her arms around him as well. Raven. He looked back, his voice again faltering when he saw what she had on underneath her cape. A wide cleavage pale purple teddy and panties. The teddy itself was somewhat curve-hugging and the panties hung low on her hips. The normally stoic girl blushed, biting her lip a little. Well, she did tell you there were others. Right now, I'm mostly here to make sure she doesn't push you beyond what you're really comfortable with. She gave Jinx a look, who teasingly stuck her tongue out in return. One of the bigger benefits of having empathic abilities. And with that in mind, Jinx's voice took on a husky tone as she started to pull down the zipper of his jumpsuit. You ready for your lesson, big boy? Izuku forced away the nervousness that was still hanging around and nodded. I'm ready. Lemon, as usual, to be found on AO3. It's been almost a month, Bruce. Barbara Gordon, aka Oracle, griped. And I've already met the rest of the league. Heck, he already knows about who I am anyway. Batman sighed. It's been a busty time, Barbara. He's been getting into shape for the main part of his training. Well, in that case, why don't we get a look at him? She grinned, typing something into the computer to bring up one of her smart cameras, bringing up an image of him. Batman quickly looked away while Barbara Wolf whistled. Hello. Mrs. Midoriya is going to have my head if she finds out. He muttered, before his communicator came on. Batman. Jonas' voice spoke up over it. Mrs. Midoriya can't get in contact with Izuku. She wants to know what he's doing. You mean who? Oracle. Batman hissed. Wait, what? Inko's voice cried out over the comm. John could be heard almost wincing. That I shouldn't have had it on speaker, should I? After staring at the camera feed for a few moments, all Inko could manage to say was, OH.my. Lemon continues. As the panting slowly receded, Izuku found himself quickly sandwiched by both girls, all three sweaty, sticky and as rumpled as the bed they were on. Jinx giggled and snuggled against him, one of her legs around him. And a tired, but very pleased Raven used her magic to pull the sheet up over them. Hey BB. Cyborg looked back to where Raven was. The normally stoic girl was heading to the kitchen, humming a perky little tune with a look of pure contentment on her face. What happened to Ray? I haven't seen her this happy since fate managed to lock away her connection to old Four Eyes. Oh, she and Jinx hooked up with Izuku. Beast Boy replied, causing Robin to look up from his book. Really? About time. He said, returning back to his book. Before looking back up. Wait, did you say Jinx and Raven? Yes, Robin. Raven called back, coming out with a croissant and a cup of coffee. A tray of other things was floating behind her. Izuku is our boyfriend now. Oh, that's what I thought he said. Wow. Robin, you're taking this kinda well. Cyborg said, watching his female teammate saunter back down the hall, her bare legs sticking out from under the shirt she had on. Raven and Jinx are big girls, Cyborg. He replied. If they want to ask a guy if they can share him, it's their choice. Besides, I've had snack cakes that were more conniving than Izuku, were more likely to try and protect his innocence than theirs. Anyone else notice that was one of his shirts she had on? Beast Boy added. Batman's idea, let him worry about it. When she got back to Jinx's room, the girl was currently curled up in Izuku's lap, dressed similar to Raven. Please tell me Beast Boy already ate all that tofu stuff. Jinx grimaced. That junk doesn't get along with me at all. Luckily, it was Robin's turn to cook. She said, the tray floating in to show it stacked with sausage, toast, eggs, some fruit, and a couple bottles of milk and orange juice. Let's dig in. As the three ate, Izuku felt now was the best time to bring up something he'd been wondering about. Guys, not that I didn't enjoy last night. Heck, it was unbelievable. But why were you two so willing to sleep with me so soon? Another bonus to having empathic abilities. Raven replied. It lets me compare emotional matches to see if they'd make for good relationships. She curled up against him with her coffee. Like us. Not to mention the life of a pro superhero doesn't really leave a lot of time for dates and romance. So why bother waiting when you're about it? Also, just so you know, Jinx grinned and wiggled in his lap. Neither of us are really the possessive type. Okay, that's a good thing, right? He asked, thinking they were talking about the kind of person who didn't like their partner hanging out with others. Raven quickly picked up on it. Possessive as in, we're cool with sharing you if any other heroines catch your eye. Acid share? Izuku's eyes widened. Yeah, believe it or not, you wore us out. Jinx giggled, kissing him. Raven grinned. Just glad my mother taught me a couple of healing spells or we'd be walking funny for a little while. Just as she said that, Izuku's comm link beeped. Must be Batman with your training for today. Raven levitated it over to him. He quickly flicked it on. Hello. His eyes widened when the little screen showed Inko. Emma Mrs. Midoriya? All three blurted out, not expecting to see her just then. Ah, Izuku. I wondered if I'd catch you this early. And I'm glad to see your girlfriends, Raven and Jinx, are there as well. How do you know about that? Jinx asked. The woman's supremely calm tone was sending a chill down her spine. Oh yes, I'm very much aware, considering I was unexpectedly treated to the sight and sounds, or your party, last night. Izuku paled. His mom had seen him having SEC? Why you saw? How? Just let me finish. She continued. I must admit, I'm quite surprised. And I'm afraid I only have one thing to say. Midoriya, we can explain, honest. Raven spoke up, fearing just how badly this could turn out. Oh honey, I'm so happy for you. Inko squealed, her voice suddenly shifting into pure glee. I have a feeling your father would be jealous if he found out. All three were more than a little dumbfounded at that. You're okay with us, but? Raven started, but Inko waved it off. Don't worry about it, sweetie. I wasn't really prepared to actually see something like that. I'm just happy he found someone. Or two in this case. Little bit of advice, though, you may want to be a little more careful next time, unless you want another audience. Okay. Sure thing, Mum. Izuku replied, his voice a tad on the weak side. Raven, should we tell her we're cool with other girls getting with him too? Jinx whispered. As long as none of them are those awful, punch-first, Sundra types, it's fine. Inko grimaced. Can't stand girls like that. I can't believe them. They knew I liked Izuku too. An irate voice cut in through the comm. Who in the world? Inko asked. That sounds like Kara. Supergirl. Raven told her. Kara, just calm down. Another joined in, who they quickly identified as Superman. I know you're upset, but Jinx made the first dash. They could at least invited me as well. Just take say what? It wouldn't have taken me that long to get a red solar emitter from the fortress. Superman could be heard letting out a considerable groan. I blame you, Wayne. Whoops, that I knew we forgot something. Jinx winced. 3? And Supergirl? Wow, you certainly aren't doing this halfway, Izuku. A bit of pride laced his mom's voice. Thanks, Mom. Izuku blinked. Back in Mizutofu City, a somewhat diminutive boy, with odd ball-shaped growths on his head, looked around wildly. My ears are burning like crazy. Someone's done the impossible, I just know it. That might just be from yesterday, dude, when you tried to put your head on the chest of that girl with a fire-breathing quirk. His associate, a taller boy with spiky blonde hair, said. What she did to you was your own fault. Okay, so you two want me to take Izuku out on a practice patrol, right? In Gotham. Nightwing said, looking at Batman and Superman. Yeah, nothing big, just across the residential area. Superman replied, looking calm. D-Dash, however, saw through it. And this is in no way an attempt to keep him out of Supergirl's clutches until she's settled down. He chuckled when Batman raised an eye. Given the rant she had about it, definite props to Izuku, by the way. I think Booster Gold is the only one who hasn't heard. Both men did their best not to wince. While Mrs. Midoriya was surprisingly fine with the fact that her son had been NTMT with the two goth heroines, Ma and Pa Kent were something of a different story. Namely that the idea of telling them their little girl wanted to, more or less, knock boots with a boy they had yet to meet. Nightwing knew it was a little mean, but the thought of Batman, of all people, being scared of the Kents, Superman, he could understand since they were his parents. Batman just had him cackle a little. A quick glance up let him see the full moon hanging over the city. Despite the currently clear sky, there was a noticeable rumble of thunder in the distance, and they could see the approaching storm clouds. Typical Gotham night? Izuku asked. He was currently wearing a black jumpsuit with a bandana concealing his hair. Putting it mildly. Nightwing replied, sighing a little at the prospect of getting soaked. Again. From the roof they were using as a vantage spot, he looked out over the dual row of apartments. It looked quiet, but it was Gotham. That could change fast. Alright. This is the Fidelheit Arms apartment complex. At worst, we should just find your usual two-bit thug or crook. A quick jog across the roof and we'll be. Nightwing? Izuku spoke up. I think we have company. The former sidekick spun around. What do you dash? He started to ask, only to see a familiar woman wrapping her arms around the boy. The leather outfit she had on hugging her curves. Catwoman. Long time no see, Nighty, she said casually, pressing her chest against Izuku's head a little. Not quite one of your usual hunting spots. He replied. Well, I spied you two a few blocks back and couldn't resist saying hello to the League's newest morsel. She purred, gently pulling the greenette's head in between her beards for a reverse marshmallow. He is adorable. Hello, Miss Kyle, I mean Catwoman. He stammered, trying to ignore the soft mounds squished against his noggin. So Jinxie wasn't pulling my tail. Nightwing looked at her. Jinx. I ran into her the other day. She'd mentioned how her and Raven's new boyfriend had gotten your attention and was made a member. Her voice dropped to a husky whisper. You must be quite the Superman to be able to handle two super girls at once, as well as rock their worlds. And gunning for a third already. Selena, come on. Nightwing muttered. We got a patrol to get to. Oh, don't be such a spoil sport, Nighty, she replied, pulling Izuku closer against her. You wouldn't happen to be interested in an older woman, would you? Older. Izuku managed to get out. A quick glance to either side revealed her suit was unzipped, giving him an inside view of her cleavage. She shook for a second before letting out a fit of giggles and letting him go. Don't worry, kiddo. I'm just messing with. Talk to Raven and Jinx and we'll see. He replied, almost on reflex. Both Nightwing and Catwoman looked at him in surprise, until she laughed even louder. Oh, I like him. She grinned. All right, Selena, why are you really here? Nightwing asked. There's no way you follow us all this way just to get him flustered. True, that was the bonus. Catwoman got a little more serious. I got wind that Harley and Ivy are planning something, so you might want to be on your toes. Harley? As in Harley Quinn. Izuku blanched a little. But isn't she Joker's second in command? I thought Poison Ivy hated him. Former second. Nightwing corrected him. She and the clown had a falling out a while back. Now you barely see her or Ivy without the other around. Definite improvement in company. She commented. Ivy may prefer plants to people, but she's a lot more human than that giggly psycho. Before either could respond, every building within a 3-block radius suddenly went black. Speak of the thorn bush. Catwoman said. Normally I'd offer to come along, but Isis had her kittens and I can't leave them alone too long. Later, boys. She sent a wink Izuku's way before swinging off. She always like that? Izuku asked. He'd considered having Izuku wait for him, but Nightwing was wary about leaving him alone in a city he'd been to before. Not to mention the risk of him being found by one of the local lunatics. Thankfully, Oracle was already tracking the radiating outages and led them to the West Gotham power plant. Even as they neared it, they could see it was suffering structural damage. A large hole had been ripped in the wall, and they could hear the sounds of crushing metal and concrete inside. You think this could be them? Izuku asked as they landed on the roof of the plant. Yeah, Bane, Hatter, and Two-Face are still Arkham. Riddle's ego wouldn't let him do something like this without sending Batman one of his puzzles, and no laughing or ice, so that leaves Dash. Unfortunately, the damage done to the building was more than they saw. A sudden cracking sound caught their attention. What was that? Izuku asked. Right before the section of roof he was standing on gave out from under him. Izuku! Nightwing yelled, seeing him plummet into the plant interior. Meanwhile, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy were watching one of the botanist's newest creations latch its fangs onto the turbines. Eat hearty, big guy. Harley called out, sitting beside Ivy on a large leaf from the plant monster. Once we've drained this thing dry, Gotham will have no choice but to pay up if it wants its precious electricity back. Ivy smirked. Incoming. Was that you? The villains asked each other, only to get their answer in the form of a green-haired boy landing in Harley's lap. Hi? He said nervously. Ivy raised a brow his way. Where'd you come from? Oh, Red, he's adorable. Harley squealed, hugging him like he was a plush toy. Can we keep him? Please? Wait. Izuku jumped in before she could reply, pointing at the modified vegetation. Are those plants biologically channeling electricity? With bioelectric generators and storage units? He looked at them, all trace of fear gone. Do you know how much governments would pay to have access to a renewable power supply they could literally grow in their garden? I mean, why the heck are you trying to steal power? Say what? Ivy asked, a tad dumbfounded. Just plug these guys into the power grid and sell the electricity. Most of the other kinds of power would start to go bankrupt within a month, especially the coal and nuclear plants. Not to mention the scientists will be beating down your door to get more planted across the world. Harley and Ivy both stunned glances at that bit of info. Sorry that I got kinda excited. You know, I never really thought of that, but the kid's got a point, Red. Green energy is a huge fad in science circles. The only thing really blocking it taking off is the bottom line for businesses. Ivy hummed a little, lightly fingering her lip. True. Beating them at their own game would be delicious karma. And the idea of going fully legit is appealing. In that case, she slid her arms around him, both her and Harley's bias pressing against him. Yes, we can keep him. You should probably talk to Jinx and Raven about that first. They said they didn't mind sharing, but I don't think they'll put up with someone trying to steal me away from them. Harley gave him a closer look. Wait, you're that kid? Her eyes widened. The one Batsy made a league member, 'cause he was a security risk otherwise? The one that's got every super female between 15 and 25 fighting to get in his pants. Yes, Dr. Quinn, that's me. I guess? Not sure about that last part, though. He gulped when he felt one of Quinn's hands shift a bit. Dr. Aselli, could you please restrain your partner? She's making me nervous. Down, girl, Ivy said, seeing Harley was giving him an appraising look. Come on, Red. Admit it, you're a little curious about how he managed to pull that off as well. Though, best guess, it ain't no police baton he's got down there. Ivy followed Harley's gaze to his crotch. What's that term they use in Japanese comics? Era. On the roof, Nightwing could only stare down at what he'd just seen. Izuku had successfully defused the terrorist activities, had one of the villains in question rethinking how she should go about things, and was now being marshmallowed by the both of them as a thank you. All he could really do there was facepalm as he slowly took out his communicator. Nightwing to Batman, I dunno whether to pity or envy Izuku. The Caped Crusader didn't miss a beat. Who is it this time? Catwoman, Harley, and Poison Ivy in one night. Batman was briefly silent until, that maybe Flash's theory isn't that out there after all? Theory. Both of Izuku's parents have quirks. His father can generate fire, and his mother can attract objects to her, albeit small ones. Given that quirks can be unusual in how they get passed on, especially when two quirks mix. Flash thinks Izuku has a quirk for attracting hot things? He was quiet again. Yes. Tell Flash I'm putting $50 on, at least 12. Explain. Come on, Bruce. You can't tell me Flash hasn't started a pool on how big Izuku's harem is going to get if that's his theory. And Plastic Man's probably helping. But my money's on don't. Superman will already be at 6 once Kara finally gets hold of him. My ears. The bald-headed boy shrieked. It's happening again. Dude, you should probably get that looked at. Are you serious? Flash asked, nearly choking on his drink after D had finished telling about what happened on the practice patrol. He was trying so hard not to laugh, he nearly vibrated off his chair. I kid you not. Hell, Robin said Harley and Ivy called the Titans, asking if they could talk to Raven and Jinx. That lucky little dash. Wally finally lost the fight and toppled to the floor, howling with laughter. Nightwing watched the sight in amusement until Superman blurred into view. Normally that'd be standard when the Man of Steel got hungry. The mild panic on his face was new. Have either of you seen Midoriya? He went to his room to change. Nightwing answered. Why? I lost track of Kara. And it's not funny, Flash. He glared at the braying speedster. Flash just rolled around. Yes, it is. 9 to go. Izuku said to himself, looking at the calendar. In just under 9 months, he'd be participating in the U.A high entrance exam. He wasn't too sure what to expect, but his time in the league so far had him almost eager to see what they'd have. A quick glance in the mirror had him chuckle a little. Whoever said, a lot can happen in whatever amount of time, wasn't kidding. The Deku had long since faded. In his place was something that was a stark contrast. The browbeaten appearance and socially awkward air replaced with a calm, confident demeanor. Along with the mental and emotional change, the training had done a number on the scrawny frame he used to have. It wasn't a lot yet, but he could feel it. He laughed again and did a less than serious flex. He'd just gotten a bicep to form when he saw his door open in the reflection and a familiar blonde step in. Oh, hey, Kara. He said, noticing she was wrapped up in her cape. Jinx said you'd be over. What's that? She didn't respond, except to do a rather cute lip bite before setting down what looked like a plasma ball, except it had something inside it resembling 2 gyroscopes fused together and made out of red crystal. He watched her press down on the top, and it began glowing, casting a red hue over them. It was then that he noticed she wasn't wearing boots. Clark? What's wrong with you? Batman asked, seeing the man stop dead and shudder a little. I just got the feeling I'm going to have to explain something to my parents. His voice filled with dread. And I really don't want to. John, did you feel that? Martha Kent asked, looking around. It wasn't an earthquake, was it? I don't think so, dear. John scratched his thinning hairline. But, for some reason I feel like I should be happy for Kara for some reason. You and me both. I know you explained about that Amazon beam, Tashinori. Recovery Girl said, removing her stethoscope at giving him his usual checkup, but I still barely believe it, and the proof is right in front of me. You've already managed to regain about 11% of your old muscle mass. I know. He leaned back in his chair. I still have to pinch myself on occasion to make sure I'm awake. He stopped and looked up. Huh. Something wrong? Nope. Dunno why, but here's to you, Midoriya. He called out, procuring a bottle of sake from somewhere, and taking a deep swig. Tashinori, I didn't know you drank. Recovery Girl said, looking shocked. Nope, tolerance I 0 alcohol have. He blurted out, right before passing out, and sliding off the chair in a snoring heap. Back in Izuku's room, about a half hour later, a tired, grinning and naked Izuku and Kara lay on his bed. Kara's hair was splayed out around her, and she ran a finger over the hickey the synthetic red sunlight had let him put on her shoulder. Hey, you sure you're not part Kryptonian? The two shared a brief laugh, and she curled up against him. Won't Superman be kind of upset about? He started, only for her to wave it off. Clark knows I can take care of myself. Truth be told, he was more worried about me accidentally putting you in the hospital. That, and while he'll meet the likes of Metallo, Darkseid and Atrocitus Hedon, the idea of telling Ma and Pa that their niece has the hots for a boy makes him nervous. Nervous? Superman? He blinked, not really expecting those two words to be used. Wait, you said Ma and Pa, as in his parents? Let me deal with it. Knowing Pa, he'll probably just be glad I found a boy who's not intimidated at me being able to bench press in the multi-ton range. Can't decide if I should be impressed or jealous of that. He added, or both. Tim, I just got word what happened? Batman half yelled over the comms. Some nutjob charged into the restaurant Izuku was at and starting shooting at everything. A ricochet tagged him in the side. Is he? He tried to hide it, but Robin could hear the concern in his voice. The same type he showed towards him, Barbara, or D-. He's okay. Thankfully the bounce took away a lot of the bullet's power. The worst it did was skip off one of his ribs. He's in a lot better shape than the other guy, at least. How so? The schadenfreude in Robin's voice was unmistakable. He was on a date with Raven and Jinx, and they both let him know neither appreciated him shooting their boyfriend. Last I heard, the paramedics were stuck between trying to undo the knot his arms were in, and laughing themselves sick at the two mop heads wedged in his colon. The other end was quiet, until he heard a muffled wheeze and snort. Batman quickly cleared his throat. How is he? It didn't go in too deep, but managed to leave a decent gash, so he was brought in to get any pieces of bullet that might have gotten left in it. Soon as he heard that, a thought hit Batman. Something that made his blood briefly go cold. While Izuku had managed to perform an act he'd never even considered, and he was still kicking himself for it, in showing Poison Ivy how she could get out of the criminal business. Last he checked, she was taking it seriously, even given him the notes and materials to some of her more violent projects for disposal. Despite that, he was still human, a teen and still in training. Not to mention the fact that word might get out about that, and he could find himself with a target on him. His gaze hardened at the thought. Well, I must say, you are a very fortunate young man. The doctor said, while Raven helped Izuku get a new shirt on. The bullet skipped off the bone at a shallow enough angle to do only superficial damage to the bone. That's a relief, he said, grunting a little as he got his left arm in the sleeve. It should heal up in a few days at most. Although, you will be rather sore, and I recommend against doing any excessive physical activity until then. Don't worry, document, Jinx said, putting her arms around him gently, Raven following suit. We'll make sure he follows instructions. As the three left the hospital, Izuku glanced at them. Wait, if the wound's that minor, and Raven said she knows healing dash. Jinx cut him off. 'Cause we want to know which one of us you think looks best in a nurse outfit, and nursing you back to health while you're injured is the only way they'll stay on long enough for you to really choose. Jinx. Raven's cheeks turned bright pink. What? Jinx was unrepentant. A slightly goofy grin crossed his face. Can't argue with that logic. Lucius, Batman said, entering his CEO's workshop personal lab. Evening, boss. The inventor spoke up, eyes never leaving the plasma cutter he was currently operating. I take it you're here about the armor you requested for the League's new member. He pointed a thumb at a nearby table. Following the gesture, Batman walked over and looked at the pieces resting there. Molded to resemble bracers, shin guards, greaves, and cuirass, they were the color of cast iron, but proved to be surprisingly light when he picked one up. Used the same material you and your boys have, Lucius said, once he'd finished. Getting up, he promptly joined his employer at the table. Titanium thread interwoven with carbon fiber mesh. I don't know what Mr. Midoriya's exact measurements are, so I used Robin's since they have a similar height and build. How far along are you so far? The actual suit itself will be ready in a couple of days. However, it's just in the prototype stage, since you said he'll have final say on certain components. He's still recovering from the gunshot, so you'll have time. Never thought I'd say this, but I love my life, Izuku thought, mentally dancing while he lay in bed, with all three of his girls cuddling him. And all three in nurse outfits of varying skimpiness. Raven's was the most conservative, a tight-fitting black uniform with white thigh-high stockings, and a skirt that barely covered her backside. She was at his side, holding his head against her chest. Kara's was similar, but light blue, with a slightly shorter skirt, and a large heart cutout in the front, showing off a considerable amount of cleavage. She was cuddling him from behind. Jinx was currently straddling his lap, though her outfit was more of a pink bikini with a nurse cap. All three were holding him tight. Well, his pulse is good, so I believe he'll live. Raven smirked. Izuku just let out a mumbled laugh from between her BRs. Beast Boy looked up at the clock. So, got any idea when it's supposed to get here? He asked. The Titans had notified by John to expect a DLVY sometime that day. With no alerts or sights of any villains, waiting for it was pretty much all they were doing at the moment. Robin shook his head. No idea. All I know is that he said it's a prototype Bruce and his gear developer were working on. Maybe it's some kind of new computer and he wants to try and break it. Cyborg, who'd been nodding off, quickly perked up hearing that. Ooh, I got this bootleg copy of Thunder Runners for that's got so much malware, it bricked 2 of my good hard drives. If it can survive that. He was cut off when one of the watchtower's boom tubes appeared, depositing a large cylindrical container about the size of a human, and a small computer touchscreen was on it along with a keypad. Hang on, this is one of Batman's transport pods. The kind he uses to get suits and gear to himself and others in the field. Robin said, spying a notice on the screen. He tapped it and a message started playing in Bruce's voice. Since Robin would recognize the pod, then the package has arrived if you're reading this. The group listened to the recording, Izuku's eyes widening a little. Armor? He asked. Looks like it. Robin started typing in the combination in to unlock it. After Joker shot Barbara, he was adamant D, and I get extra reinforcement in our gear. He rapped his knuckles on his chest so they could hear a slightly muffled thump under the fabric. Guess he decided to extend that to you. Hitting the last key caused the seal to crack open with a loud hiss, followed by the front halves sliding apart to reveal the contents. Do it. Beast Boy whistled. That's just a prototype? Izuku stared at what lay before him. Aside from it lacking a helmet and vest, that looked more like something a SWAT member would wear. Any other comments were silent when Raven suddenly used her magic to pull it out and into Cyborg's field of view. Upgrades. Now. Yes, ma'am. He answered without hesitation. Wow, that was kinda fast, Cy. Beast Boy said, watching him gather up the suit and everything else that was in the pod. Hey, I may much be a fan of but I've played my share of RPGs, and Raven's the only one who knows any healing magic. And you don't piss us off the white mage. Robin added. No, you do not. I don't care how funny that Kilowog guy finds it, John. I refuse to go by Captain Pimth. Izuku retorted into his comlink, leaping across a small gap between rooftops. He'd been set on his first solo patrol, using Muzutafu since he was familiar with the city's layout. However, when Vixen mentioned what they should call him to keep from any unwanted elements from finding his family, the chat quickly drifted into the territory they were in now. Still funny. The local Green Lantern replied, before Superman spoke up. Come on, people. We can worry about Midoriya's hero name later. He's still on his first solo patrol, remember? Wonder Woman joined in. Clark's right and we need to dash. Besides, I kind of like Flash's idea. What? Zig? Seriously? Yeah, you know. Go Zig. For great justice. Flash spoke up. I'd take that over any day, to be honest. Izuku muttered, though the comms still caught it. Yeah, Zig works. I'm fine with that. Izuku just shook his head. Despite the job, the whole league was still human. Figuratively speaking, of course. Izuku, how's the new armor holding up? John spoke up. Since he could hide out in the open, he'd volunteered to watch Izuku's back in the field, in case he ran into something he couldn't quite handle. Not too bad. Still getting accustomed to the weight. He replied. While the suit Batman had sent over a few weeks ago had proven to be an okay fit, and it did hold up to throwing knives, shuriken, getting tackled by a green bear, and a couple of Robin's explosives, it didn't last long when Raven and Jinx unloaded on the poor thing. Along with Kara when she heard about it and offered her own testing. Bruce was a mix of surprised at the brutality they'd inflicted and impressed that the trio was willing to go that far to ensure Izuku would be safe wearing it. Some of the armor plates had managed to survive, so Cyborg included them into the next version. A bit of experimenting and advice from Zatanna had let Cyborg come up with a flexible alloy that formed interlocking plates and joints that, combined with the plates, formed a full suit, complete with helmet. They didn't tell him what all they did, but Raven, Jinx, and Kara had each thrown in their own suggestions and additions. Sometimes he could swear he'd spy odd sigils glow slightly in the metal. The end result, Izuku was now dressed like a high-tech knight. Time in Gotham had given him an appreciation for darker colors, so he'd picked out a black and dark green motif for the coloring. While he was still practicing with his bow and tonfa work, Cyborg already had plans to work on something that'd let him incorporate his weapons into the armor so they'd be on hand. Since he felt it only seemed right to have something on it, out of respect for the two heroes he looked up to the most, the lower half of his face was concealed by a connected mask that resembled a wide grin that Starfire said looked less than friendly. The rest of his face was hidden by a green-colored visor made from the same material as the Batmobile's windshield, along with a single ear that swept from the left side of the helmet. He was grateful that the visor couldn't be seen into, because it managed to hide his red face when the girls, along with Zatanna and Power Girl when they saw it, had but 3 words to describe the result: CC and scary. I know the feeling. Took me a while to get used to taking on forms that had a nose. That first sneeze was an experience. Izuku had to stop mid-vault from the laughing fit he got from that comment, until his visor flickered. What's that? He watched a radar-like HUD appear and a marker showing up on it. Turning around, he noticed the HUD was turning as well, until it showed the whatever it was indicating dot was straight ahead. John, for some reason my suit is telling me there's something happening. He looked at the display, dot about 200 yards northeast of my position. Go on ahead. I'll be nearby just in case. Okay. He ended the talk and took off, following the radar. Toga Himiko's smile twitched as she watched her 2 classmates start trading blows. A strike to one was hard enough to knock a tooth loose. When he spat out the blood, her eyes widened and she felt it call to her, the old yearnings surging forth anew. Her body tensed when another punch brought a split lip and the yearn sang louder. So beautiful, she whispered, her gaze darting along the splotches and lines of shining crimson. When she saw the face of the boy named Saito, and his blood-stained appearance, she felt her heart race and she couldn't contain herself any longer. Saito! Her joy-filled yell caused both boys to stop and look her way, just in time to see the wide smile and glint of the box cutter in her hand. I love you! A cry of pain reached Izuku when he arrived at the scene, and sensors in his armor were lighting up like mad. The sight that greeted him wasn't what he expected. A boy, slightly older than him, was pinned to the ground by a girl. And she was liking a cut on his arm. What is she? He started until something flickered on his visor. John, I don't know how, but the suit's picking up a quirk activating. His gaze shot back to the girl. Not good. Looking back, he'd admit that he wasn't sure if it was reflex or what, but Izuku went into a dead sprint towards her. The girl didn't even seem to notice he was there, if the look of joy on her face. She leaned in, moving to sink her sharper-than-normal teeth into the wound, only to have a metal-clad arm force its way in between her and the boy. The next thing she felt was being yanked away from him and deposited somewhat roughly onto the grass a few feet away. She started to snap something, but whatever it was froze in her throat, along with the rest of her when she saw the metallic grin and faint green glow behind the visor. You. A relaxed smile crossed her face. Heh, guess I always was a bad girl after all, huh? And now the devils come to drag me to hell for it. The smile turned resigned. Please be gentle with me, Maozama? Izuku faltered. He'd been half expecting her to be some crazed stalker or criminal and start fighting back, or at least try to bite him. What are you talking about? Not this. My quirk. Everyone says it's evil, so I have to be normal, she replied. He stared. What? There's no such thing as an evil quirk. I mean, there are some that can be used for evil easier than others, but every quirk has that potential. That's the dumbest. The only thing stupider is saying you're automatically evil because of it. He quickly got off her and grabbed onto the top of a nearby fire hydrant to steady himself. What kind of idiot told you that? My parents dash. She was cut off by the loud crack of metal breaking as the hydrant's bonnet shattered in his grip and bent the operating nut slightly. Come again. The calm tone he now had was icy. Before he could say anything else, though, Jun's hand settled on his arm. Zig, calm down. I heard it as well, but right now, though, we need to handle the situation at hand. Martian Manhunter? They both looked at the blonde. Holy crap, you're actually here? The boys that were fighting had already ran off, leaving just the three of them, so John decided to get to the point. The boys. Why did you attack them? She sighed, taking on a somewhat dreamy attitude. The blood that is so beautiful. I know my parents and counselor keep demanding I be normal to stop using my evil quirk, but I couldn't help it. Just seeing that wonderful red sang to me. John. Izuku looked at him. Something's very wrong here. The alien hero nodded. I agree, despite how some quirks have a higher potential to be used for criminal activity, there's no such thing as an evil one. Also, she's not behaving like a criminal either. Yeah, you can't just tell someone to stop using their quirk. It doesn't work like that. I say we bring her with us, there's way more here than we're seeing. As the saying went, news traveled quick. It didn't take long before the boys there had informed Toga's parents. They'd learned her name was Himiko, who reacted surprisingly quick. By the time John and Izuku got the okay to bring her aboard the watchtower and situated somewhat, they were already having a press release. What's wrong, Izuku? Batman asked, seeing the boy looking out through one of the watchtower's windows. He looked calm, but Bruce could see his knuckles turning white from the grip he had on the rail. You saw the press statement, right? From Himiko's parents? He spat the word out like it was the vilest slur out there. I saw. Anger briefly tinged his voice before shifting to a softer tone. You handled extracting her quite well. John is already working to give her counseling. He motioned over to a solitary table where the two were sitting. Izuku looked at him. Bruce, it would be bad to take them to task, right? Depends on what you have in mind. Tell me I shouldn't, please. His grip tightened even more, causing his knuckles to audibly pop. I'm afraid of what I might do if I did. Bruce gently set a hand on his shoulder. That's reason enough not to. You should never go into a situation where you doubt your self-control, at least not alone. That's something all of us have had to go through at least once. Make sure anyone you bring with you is strong enough to hold you back, as well as calm and in control enough to not egg you on. Izuku sighed. It's just. He looked over to see John calmly talking to Toga. The hand lightly resting on her head showed he was conversing mentally as well as physically. She nodded slightly before a few tears ran down her cheek. I know exactly how you feel. Not the only one either. Hearing that, he glanced about, and Batman could hear his mumbling. If you're doing a head count, only Flash and Zatara are missing. Oh. Where are they? Don't worry, they have excellent self-control and both of them can be pretty creative in blowing off steam without being noticed or leaving collateral damage. Oh. Good to know. He winced a little when he forced himself to let go of the rail, his knuckles cracking louder on extension. Bruce. John's voice echoed in the man's head. How is she? Not too well. Quirk suppression is taking its toll on her. Batman's eyes narrowed. Suppression. Her quirk allows her to copy the physical appearance of people. However, it requires her to consume the blood of the person. It also gave her a fascination with it. Because of this, her family made her stop using it and be normal, claiming it was evil, and therefore she was evil for using it. Didn't they get her help? Someone who could teach her to use it properly? Bruce found it hard to imagine a not even trying to help their child. John snorted mentally. The so-called counselor they sent her to did nothing but tell her to be normal as well. How long? His tone hardened. He was thoroughly tempted to lay into those people, rules be med. Almost 10 years. Long enough for her quirk to start to adapt, and not in a good way. The uncharacteristic anger in Manhunter's voice actually managed to give Bruce pause. After being fought against for so long, it's starting to cause a psychological demand for blood. as well as the mental and emotional strain just from the resisting itself. What can we do to help her? John made eye contact with Izuku and gestured for him to come over, slowly stepping back as he got near. We've already started, thankfully. Hey! Izuku edged a little closer to the still crying girl. I'm sorry about Dash, he didn't much word in after that. The moment Himiko realized he was there, she latched into him like he was a teddy bear. I don't want to be a bad girl, honest. She got out between sobs. But when I saw his blood, I couldn't control it anymore. It's going to be okay, he said softly, gently putting his arms around her. We're going to help you. I promise. A shriek rent the evening air in downtown Gotham. The scream for help echoed slight from the lone alley. Those few that heard it thought a mugger, or potentially worse, had found their latest victim. They were half right that a victim had been found, but the mugger that was currently being dragged into the darker end of the alley by a grappling line wasn't really being pitted by the couple he'd tried to jump a few seconds ago. Mommy! He was quickly silenced, an armored elbow to the face, courtesy of Izuku. That's what, the third mugger so far? He asked while Robin cuffed him. Yet at HM, I recognize this one. Think he used to work for Riddler a while back. He rolled his eyes. They never learn. The two carted their latest catch to a spot where the police would find him easily. How'd the toe claw handle? Pretty good. He held up his left forearm, where a small section rose up to reveal a three-pronged grasper. Cyborg said it's got a 600-pound hold, long as I can keep my feet planted. We reeled him in like a panicking fish. Robin snorted in amusement at that. Come on, we still got a couple of hours before Batman and Nightwing arrive for their shift. The duo quickly grappled up to the nearest rooftop and cut across to the other side of the block. As they did, Izuku spied something out of the corner of his eye. For a second he thought he saw a flicker of green vanish around a water tower across the street. What was that? What? Robin followed his gaze. Dunno, could swear I saw something over on the roof over there. He glanced around. You don't think we're being followed, do you? Doubt it. Most of the crooks that aren't still in Arkham would have tried to spring a trap by now. Last I heard, Deadshot's still recovering after his run-in with Etrigan, and Deathstroke managed to get on the League of Shadows' bad side somehow. Robin glanced back over to the roof. Either way, we should probably keep an eye out. The two continued their patrol across town. After catching a lady trying to pick the lock on a rooftop door, things were looking to settle down. Until they decided to swing across to a local shopping mall. Don't think I'll ever get over the rush from doing Dash. Hi, Zuzu. Izuku was cut off by a glomp from one Harley Quinn, the impact taking him out of his swing and sending them both into an oddly convenient bounce castle. Harley. Robin heard him yelp from inside. What are you, what are those really shorts you have on? Like, red, and I got the all clear from your other girls. So I thought I'd dress for the occasion. Harley chirped, followed by her voice taking on a purr. Now, how about getting out of that armor so we can get acquainted? It's moments like this that make me happy to be dating just one girl. Robin thought, heading to the shaking structure. As much as I'd like to leave you two alone, we've got a patrol to finish. Robin stared a little at what he saw inside. Harley was straddling a prone Izuku, wearing a green and white jacket and green short shorts. The jacket was quickly shed, showing off the green and white halter top she had on. Don't worry, I just need an hour or 3. She replied, pulling the top up and patting Izuku down. Now where's the off switch for this thing? Harley, I no wonder you wore that skin-tight bodysuit. Mentally, he was somewhat glad he was in rigid armor at the moment. Tell me how to get you out of this can and you'll be doing way more than looking cutie. You realize you still have your meeting with Toga later, Izuku. Remember? Robin said, having quickly put his back to the scene. Who's Toga? Harley looked back at him. It's kind of a long story. Izuku said. He quickly told her about his encounter with Himiko a few days ago, along with her now former parents' disownment of her. They did what? Harley blurted out, unable to believe what she'd just heard. Those Maroons were more worried about their stinkin' image instead of trying to actually help her get a hold on her ability? She sat there for a second, looking almost emotionless, before speaking back up. Care to repeat that? Batman's voice came back over the comlink, doing his best to not sound confused. Harley wants to come up to the watchtower to talk to Himiko, Izuku said. And yes, she's very much aware that she'll be in the JL's home territory, and around at least a dozen beings who can easily fold her like a pair of glasses. Look, Bats. Harley cut in, leaning over Izuku's shoulder. I know you and I ain't exactly thick as thieves yet, but I'm a quarter naked at the moment. You know I have a PhD in psychology, and hearing about what the kid went through kinda reminds me of how eager I was to try and get Joker's approval, despite how much it felt like a lost cause. And what exactly do you mean by 1/4 naked? Batman asked, wondering about what kind of weapon and or gear she'd be able to hide in her current outfit. Well, I'm going commando. Very glad I'm wearing armor. Izuku mumbled. Not quite what I meant, but... Batman sighed. Hon, I know you can hear this. Locking onto their location already. Manhunter replied. Woo. Harley latched onto Izuku as she stumbled from the teleportation. That tingled. Yeah, I'm still getting used to it. Izuku said, placing a hand on his chest where a sigil started glowing, followed by the armor dematerializing, leaving him in street clothes. Izuku! Squealed Himiko as she came running up full tilt. The moment she was close enough, she flew into him with a high-speed glomp that took him off his feet. Harley had to jump out of the way when she saw her take off. Hey, Himiuf! He grunted when she tackled him. Nice distance. Harley looked at the spot she jumped from. John quietly walked up beside her. Izuku's more or less the first to actually be angry at how she was treated, so she sort of latched onto him as a source of comfort. Think we can safely say the tally's gone up to 7. He added mentally, watching the girl hug Izuku tightly. Izuku looked over where Harley and Himiko were sitting down, talking to each other while munching on a bowl of cheese straws. Is it helping? He asked, glancing over at John, who was watching with him. Given how they're still talking, it seems to be the case. I do not wish to intrude on Himiko's mind right now. Harley let her thoughts bounce from subject to subject with alarming ease. By the time I was done with her list of favorite bubblegum flavors, she was already well into notes about you and something called the Glorious Maiden Smasher. It's like keeping track of a bunch of kindergartners on a sugar rush. He shook his head as Harley looked back at them and winked before chugging down an energy drink. Glorious wa? Izuku stared in shock, face reddening. Don't look at me. You're the one who got the attention of her and Pamela Isley. John smirked. Oh, that reminds me. Harley added. Red says she owes you a special thank you for the power plan idea. She's already pitched her plans to Wayne Tech and LexCorp. Really? They were a little suspicious at first, but since she used to be a bad guy. She gave a what can you do? Shrug and went back to the conversation with Himiko. A few minutes later, she patted the girl on the arm and went over to them. Izuku looked over. So that there anything you can do for her? Well, just hanging round you guys is already helping her get through that evil quirk, evil person, hooey, so I can work on the strain she got from her family. Harley replied. Anything I can do to help? Harley just smiled. You know, just now she's in a similar spot to where I was when I first latched onto Joker. The fact you really mean that, is skin, to help her more than anyone ever did for me. She'll be just fine, long as she's got you looking out for her. And given the glomp she got you with, you're already doing it. And that leaves her getting control over her quirk itself. John said. Clark. Izuku switched on his comlink, looking around. It was the third time in as many days that he'd seen that flicker of green during his treks through Gotham. It'd be just a glimpse of what looked like a dress of some kind, before disappearing. Something wrong, Zig? The Man of Steel asked, picking up on the boy's slight unease. Just out of curiosity, have you guys ever had the feeling you're being followed? And not in the someone tagging along sense. Can't say I have, personally. One of the advantages of flying. Why? The last few days I've been spotting something green. Looks a little like someone in a dress, right before they duck out of sight. They're never farther than a rooftop over and He trailed off. Who boy? Izuku? What's wrong? I think I know. Last week I was out testing some new additions to my suit Cyborg had made, and Jinx was giving me a rundown of some of the things I hadn't figured out yet. How about adamant steel? Jinx suggested, setting up a target dummy at the end of the alley. Technically, it is a brand new alloy, so we can name it whatever we want. I don't know, isn't that just another word for stubborn? He asked as he materialized the armor. Yeah, but gotta admit. Zig, the adamant knight, sounds pretty awesome. She smirked, doing a few flips on her way over to him. All right, Cyborg told you we added a couple more toys, right? Kind of. Didn't really specify what, though. Well, he fine-tuned the sensors a bit, mostly to kick up the range and put in a thermal scanner. He added an emergency beacon in case you got stuck somewhere, as well as a lockdown mode. Dare I ask what that is? Relax, Zuzu. She chirped. It's mainly so in case you lose consciousness or something, the armor locks into place to keep any possible injuries from getting worse. Raven suggested a voice modulator to keep the baddies from recognizing it, and we put in an audio booster. It won't put you on par with Kara or Superman, but you shouldn't have much trouble hearing a conversation on the other side of a brick wall. That should come in pretty handy. He replied, looking towards the dummy. So, what's this about the physical modifications you guys said you added? Oh yeah, okay, you know the ridge running down over the spine? The bit that kinda looks like reinforcement. Yeah. He reached behind to touch it, feeling the slightly angled addition, only to start when it suddenly disengaged into his hand. Waff! He pulled his hand back to reveal the armor, expanding and unfold into a high-tech compound bow. Whoa! Yeah, we know you're still training, but figured having a decent bow on hand would be a good idea. Nice. He gave it a once-over. The dark-colored metal felt surprisingly light, complete with a small sight that extended from the handle. It was then he saw something was missing. Wait, where's the drawstring? Jinx bounced on her heels a little. We'll see. But first, give your right wrist a flick. Why? She did a go-on motion. Just do it. He had no idea what she meant, but went ahead. His hand snapped back slightly, and one of Oliver's trick arrows appeared, emerging from a seagull on his forearm, and slid easily into his grip. Let me guess, magical storage? Bingo! She chirped. This way you can carry a fully loaded quiver's worth without having to reach back for them. Once you can start using the fancy ones, you just need to think about the one you want, flick it, and Viola. Arrow let us borrow one of his net arrows to make sure it worked. Now, just put it in the bow and draw back. All right. Looking a little unsure, he did as she said. The moment the knock reached where the string would be, a wire-like line of light appeared between the bow arms. He couldn't help but chuckle. Magic drawstring. Nice touch. He pulled back, noting that it felt solid. What's the draw weight on it? Jinx shrugged. Zatanna and Raven agreed that it'd be less of a hassle to set it to match up with your own strength. She watched him take aim and let the arrow fly with a faint whistling sound, followed by the dummy topping over from the impact of the net wrapping around. Izuku-like. He grinned behind his visor. What's this? He watched as a set of numbers, calculating what apparently were draw strength, draw length and velocity before giving him an estimated distance of what the arrow's full potential range was. Wow. He looked at the finished calculation. That's a long way. Yeah, I think that's gonna pack a punch when you need it. Jinx bounced over while he put the bow back on. Next up, since Batman decided to teach you Tunfas, guess what else you got built in? Just picture drawing them. Doing so had him watching as the weapons emerged from the side of both forearms, handles unfolding right into his palms. Nice. He gave the metallic weapons a spin. Unfortunately, before he could ask her anything about them, a loud crash from around the corner grabbed their attention. They turned just in time to see a thug come flying into view, out cold before he even landed. The sounds of fighting quickly followed. Gang fight? Izuku asked, rushing to the adjacent alley alongside Jinx. Maybe, you never know who's working for who. She stopped when they rounded the turn. Almost half a dozen other goons were strewn about the alley, Some were unconscious, others were groaning in pain. 3 were still standing, facing off against a girl with long dark hair. She seemed to be a year or 2 older than them, wearing what looked like a short green kimono and a grinning cat mask. "You little bit dash." Once of the men snarled, only to cry in pain when she delivered a vicious low kick to his knee. The audible crack meant he was out of the fight, and she was already flying into the others by the time he hit the ground. "Wow, who's the cute kitty?" Izuku asked, causing the girl to glance their way before ducking under a pipe. She retaliated by hopping up to box the man's ears, followed by an axe kick that caught him hard in the jaw. Jinx rolled her eyes. "That's what gets your initial attention? Well, considering who I'm dating." He grinned at her. "You're so lucky you're adorable." She replied. "That's Cheshire." Supposedly she was trained as an assassin by some organization, dunno which, though. She tends to do more freelance mercenary jobs. A punch promptly let them know the fighting was over. Cheshire stood calmly in the middle of her handiwork, looking at the two. Izuku just waved. "But don't mind us. We heard the fighting and came to see what's up." Cheshire's head tilted to the side slightly, almost in a show of curiosity. "Yet we probably should have offered to lend a hand, but you look like you didn't really need any help with these guys. Nice job, though, steamrolled them." Cheshire just stared at them for a moment before turning and walking off down the alley. "Bye." Izuku looked at Jinx. "I take it she's not one for conversation." "We didn't think too much about it then, but now." "So, you think Cheshire is stalking you?" Superman asked. "She's fairly good at tracking someone, but that normally isn't her style." "Dunno." Izuku glanced around after vaulting over a chimney. "So far it's like she's playing a weird round of hide-and-seek. You don't think she took the steamroll bit the wrong way, do you?" Superman chuckled a little. "I probably wouldn't worry about that. Cheshire's the kind of girl who'd take more offense to her skills being made fun of than her weight. As for the why, just keep an eye out. She definitely wouldn't bother without having some kind of reason." "Maybe. Anyway, I'll try and do that. Zig out." He cut the feed and leaped over a small back alley to a building with a surprisingly large skylight. "Better be careful," he said to himself. "Last thing I need to be mistaken for a peek." He hollered when a large vine shot out through an opening in the windows and coiled around his feet with surprising speed, yanking him inside. "Hey, keep your leaves to yourself, you overgrown kudzu." He reached up to try and punch the vine. "Lego." "Oh, Izuku. I didn't expect to see you today." A voice spoke up nearby. "I see you met part of my new security system." He dropped back to see Poison Ivy walk up, wearing a lab coat over her usual foliage leotard. "Professor." A glance around showed he was inside what looked like a greenhouse botany lab. "This is your place?" She patted the vine. "You can let him go. He's all right." As it put him back down, she grinned and wrapped him up in a hug. "You have no idea how much good luck you are." "I am?" he asked, shutting off his suit when he let her go. "Not only have Wayne Tech and LexCorp agreed to deals concerning my power plants, but Star Labs is showing interest for possible interplanetary and deep-sea projects." She let out a giddy squeal. "That's great, but aren't you worried that Luther might try and use your creations for something sneaky? It's no secret that he's well, a JRK?" She led him to a door on the opposite side of the room. "True, but I made sure to let them both know my little generators have a fail-safe built right into their DNA. Anyone tries to modify them for something other than what they're meant for, they'll self-destruct, melting down into several hundred pounds of foul-smelling sludge." He chuckled a little. "That's one way to protect your equipment. Not to mention the money." Harley fainted in glee at the zeros. "Anyway, I got something I really think you'll personally enjoy seeing." "What is it?" "Don't want to spoil the surprise." She headed down the hall, with him right behind her. "Wonder what she's got." He asked himself. Maybe she's got a prototype growing already? They soon reached a door with a small sign on it. "Pamela's office. Harley, stay out when I'm not in it." There was a faint click of a lock and the door opened. She smirked and motioned for him to go in. As soon as he was a couple of feet in, he paused. Professor, why is there a bed in your dash? He paused when the door closed behind him. Harley mentioned I owe you a special thank you, didn't she? He didn't need Batman's detective skills to hear the purr in her voice. Or the sound of leaves falling. I'd love to have a bit more fun with you, Zuzu, but Harley and I like to share sometimes. Ivy said as she and Izuku got cleaned up and dressed. Izuku chuckled. I can see Dash. He was quickly cut off by the redhead's lips firmly planted on his own. Huh, Raspberry? Something to tide you over till next time. She purred once they separated. I'll second that. Once they were presentable, Izuku reformed his armor and left to resume patrol. However, he barely made it to another roof when the feeling of being followed came back. As if to confirm his suspicions, his audio booster caught the approaching rustle of fabric and he wheeled around in time to see Cheshire land nearby. Decided to pop up for real, huh? He asked, noting she didn't seem to be taking an aggressive stance. I'm guessing you haven't been following me just from curiosity. Cheshire just stood there, her expression unreadable thanks to the mask she had on. Her head briefly tilted to the side before he saw something slip into her hands. And she moved. Izuku barely had time to raise an arm up on reflex as the object unfolded into a fan edged with metal. It struck his forearm with a resounding clank. The armor kept him from injury, but there was enough force in the hit for him to feel the impact. Whoa! The heck? He jumped back when she drew another edged fan, this one scraping across his chest. What's your problem, lady? A glance at his arm showed there wasn't any damage, though he had no clue just how strong his armor really was. Cheshire, however, remained silent as she pressed the attack, swiping at Izuku with the fans from nearly every angle, forcing him into defensive measures. The air was filled with the echoing ring of metal striking metal. Whoever said, stronger than they look, wasn't kidding with her. He thought, deflecting an overhand strike, only to have the other rake his visor. Hey! All right, that's it. Knocking away another strike, he quickly drew his tonfas. Time to apply one of Batman's bigger lessons. You're pulling to the left some, Midoriya. Batman noted, watching him spar with Supergirl. Straighten your shoulder a bit. Oh right. Pulling a bit, he moved in for a hit. Unfortunately, he straightened his arm a little too much. When Kara moved to deflect his hand, it slipped farther than she meant, and landed palm first on her BRC. Whoops! Kara muttered, looking down at the hand. He stared in abject shock, face turning redder by the second, his hand squeezing slightly in reflex. Oh crud. Batman quickly brought him out of it. Midoriya, don't think about that. Remember, your opponent's gender is a non-issue. The only thing to really concern yourself with is how dangerous they are. I don't know what your problem is, Cheshire. He forced her to jump back from a swing of his tonfa, but if you want to fight, you got it. The ring of colliding metal increased in intensity as Tessin and tonfa collided. Now that he had a better way to counter, Izuku quickly went on the offensive. Gotta be careful, she's only been using those fans so far. He thought, well aware that the speed she took out that group with meant she was a lot more experienced than him. That bit of knowledge quickly raised a concern. Then that if she's intent on attacking, why isn't she using more than just the Tessin? He winced a little at the high-pitched metallic scrape as their weapons clanged off each other before getting lucky and pinning one of her fan between his tonfa. He finally managed to get a closer look at it. The design was a grinning cat's face similar to her mask, but there was something off about the blade. This fan's got metal on it, but I can't see any sharp spots. The whole thing looks... It was then that his visor highlighted it, along with a readout. Analysis, blade sharpness, 0%. Cutting lethality, none. You're attacking me with blunt Tessin? He blurted out as she pulled away, leaving the snagged fan with him. The hell? Took you long enough to spot it. She said, her voice muffled slightly from the mask. Well, it's kind of hard to see it when you're coming at me like a blender with them. He retorted. What's the deal? Gonna have to be a little more specific, Zuzu? She replied, using an oddly teasing tone as she walked around him. She just reached his side when she dashed in with another strike from the fan she still had. Izuku reacted by deflecting it over his tonfa, although that left the other fan free for her to retrieve. Using it to deliver a pair of backhand swings he was able to counter, she quickly ducked out of the way of a couple of retaliatory punches with his tonfa before jumping away. Attacking me with blunt tessin, that deal. A little of this, a little of that. That's not an answer. He muttered. What's wrong, Zuzu? She asked, a near hint of mockery in her voice. Don't like wordplay? She flipped aside to avoid his grappler when he shot it. And that's not wordplay. Izuku was starting to get annoyed with her. Now are you going to answer or what? Damn it. He had to knock away one of the fans when she flung it at him. Didn't even know those things were throw Abe. But I did answer. Izuku could practically feel the girl's smug grin behind that mask. I mean a straight answer, you vexing feline. Then maybe you should ask a straight question. I did. He growled. Really? I didn't hear dash. A scream of anger told Cheshire she may have pushed his buttons a little too much. The resulting tackle confirmed it as she quickly found herself pinned under an irate Izuku. For the last time, what do you want with me? He half yelled, visor tapping against mask. That I can answer. She replied, her voice suddenly devoid of its former taunting tone. Izuku started to respond when she suddenly wrapped her leg around him, her foot rubbing along his back and pulling him closer. A light, and rather sultry, giggle escaped her as she moved her mask aside just enough to show half her face. To see if you can make this cute kitty purr. It. His visor slowly disengaged and lifted, as if in reaction to him trying to make sure he wasn't hearing things. As he did, an unexpected, albeit familiar sensation was hitting him downstairs. His eyes widened when he realized exactly what it was. Raven, what all did you and Jinx put in this suit? Are you going commando? Maybe. She purred, grinding against him. I have a... He trailed off when his visor lowered back down, this time with a pair of messages. Go got it, babe. Take breakers Zuzu. K, what Jinx said, tongue sticking out. He stared at the messages. My luck cannot possibly be this odd. John let out a chuckle. Flash. He called over to the speedster, better bump the tally up to 8. Cyborg blinked. In his time with the Titans, he'd encountered a lot of stuff that had him do double takes. The so-called amazing mumbo, that loony Brit mad mod, tofu aliens, even the fact that his teammate Raven had a power-hungry interdimensional demon as a papa. Now he could add seeing the assassin mercenary Cheshire coming out of their shower, drying her hair, to that list. And wearing a shirt he knew belonged to Izuku. His jaw slackened when he saw her maskless for the first time. Lime green eyes and full pink lips with a dark caramel skin tone that he didn't need his internal computer to tell she was a hottie. Though, there was still the fact she was there, inside Titan Tower and currently half naked. His jaw clanked to the floor. Hin? He called out, scooping up his disconnected mandible. Ohin. He quickly took off when she looked his way. Ohin. Robin looked up from his book. Waf. Ohin. Ezra Yer. He gave his teammate a less than enthused look. Cyborg, put your mouth back together. You're drooling. There was a loud squeak and clank as Cyborg forced his jaw back into place. See, Cheshire's here. In the tower. Oh, finally out of the shower? He asked, making the larger Titan nearly faceplant in shock. Hope they didn't use all the hot water up, I'd like to get one myself. Use up, Robin. Cheshire. Here. Inside Titan Tower. Cyborg flailed his arms. Raven and Jinx. The boy wonder replied, glancing over to see Izuku come around the corner, wearing a towel and goofy smile. He shrugged when Cheshire glomped the greenette for a searing kiss, wrapping her arms and legs around him in the process. The shirt was low enough to expose just her legs, but the slight flutter, coupled with the way it bunched as Izuku was forced to grip the girl's rear to hold her up, told them the shirt was all she had on. For the second time that day, Cyborg's jaw bounced off the floor as Jinx made her appearance, grinning while she gave Cheshire's rear a squeeze herself. Just remember, Jade. Gotta share. Turned out Jade Nguyen's her real name. Robin said, answering the shocked look. There was another metallic squeak clank, followed by 2 loud thuds. Teach me your ways, Great One. Cyborg cried out, genuflecting at Izuku's feet. Sorry, Sai. Jinx said teasingly, cuddling up to him with their new addition. But you'll never be as adorable as Zuzu here. Naya. Beast Boy's head titled slowly in a mix of confusion and mild horror. Cyborg. He stared at the metal cat ears and tail his friend now wore. That's disturbing. Naya, I mean you do it all the time. Cyborg protested, sitting with a paw, hand up. But I can turn into an actual cat. What's the difference? All right, kitty cat, spill. Kara said once the girlfriend quartet, plus Starfire, were gathered in Raven's room. How was he? Jinx was quick to chime in. Yeah, we saw our boy carrying you in and straight into the shower. Well, that rooftop was a little dusty. Jade replied, still clad in the shirt. Rooftop? Kagawai. She leaned in. Go on. And don't forget the details. Jade's grin matched her mask. Lemon here. You know where to look. I don't really remember too many details after that. Aside from it being really good. Jade allowed herself to blush. It was all a pleasurable blur. At least until he had to carry me. Her blush deepened. My legs were a little wobbly afterwards. Never thought I'd enjoy being unable to walk before. The other 3 girls observed her in silence for a second until Kara spoke up. Well, I think there's only one thing to say to that. Welcome to the club. Raven patted her shoulder. Never thought Gotham would actually have a crimeless night. Izuku muttered, peering into an alleyway before hopping to the next roof. You almost sound disappointed, Izuku. Jonas' voice piped up from the armor's comm system. Batman usually sees it as peaceful when your standard thugs and hoodlums are all he runs across. Surprised, more like it? He replied. Maybe this time I'll get to finish a solo patrol in a way you're normally meant to finish it. Making sure that what looked like someone breaking into a shop's back door was just them closing up, he grappled up into a nearby fire escape. I don't know, it seems like a refreshing change of pace considering. Seriously, John? There was a measure of disbelief in Izuku's voice. While he wasn't really aggravated by the who, it was the how that made him sigh. His encounter from last week was a testimony to that. Aside from the the kinda dreary feel. Gotham seems serene when the sun's out. Izuku said, following Robin across an empty parking lot during one of their rare daytime patrols. Yeah, I've always wondered why guys like Penguin and Riddler never try stuff then. He shrugged. Maybe they've just gotten into the habit. And possibly because guys like Plastic Man and Green Arrow offer to fill in during those times too. At least it doesn't seem like we'll get any. Izuku trailed off as a huge, gray hulk of a man came lumbering from around a corner. He was wearing suspendered pinstripe trousers with a graying wife-beater shirt. However, it was the 3 knives protruding from his back, as well as the noose hanging around his neck like a morbid tie that had his attention. Solomon Grundy? I thought he never came out in the daylight. Not without good reason anyway. Robin replied, both boys taking a step back. He knew that neither of them were a match for the dead man in a straight-on fight. Hopefully that wasn't the case this time. Hearing them, Grundy turned their way and gave a low growl of acknowledgement. Grundy find you finally, he said in his rasping bass tone. Find that he's been looking for us? Robin asked, wondering what the hell they'd done to get his attention. Grundy just shook his head and pointed at Izuku. Harley Quinn asked Grundy. Harley? Wahey? Before either could react, the dead man had quietly picked Izuku up and started walking away. Robin face-bombed. She couldn't have just called? Grundy, can't you wait till after we've finished our patrol? Harley Quinn give Grundy good bourbon. Grundy keep his side of deal. Izuku groaned. Wonder if all my patrols are gonna end like this. Ivy pinched the bridge of her nose when Grundy arrived, setting Izuku down as soon as they were both inside her and Harley's house. Solomon, you were just supposed to deliver the message. Please tell me you at least told him something before carting him off. She spied Izuku's armor, And during his patrol. He said something about being sent by Harley and mentioning about the bourbon she gave him as payment. Izuku stumbled a little, regaining his bearings. Yeah. She blushed a little. We managed to get a couple barrels of 30-year-old Kentucky bourbon in trade for one of my smaller power plants. I'm more of a wine girl and Harley's beer only. So, she shrugged. Who knew the dead man loved the stuff? Yes, oh, what's this message Harley had for me? Actually, I sent it. On her behalf. Izuku looked at her, letting his armor drop. Okay, that I'll bite. Why? Remember what I said about me and her sharing? Oh. But my patrol dash. Robin just told us what happened. Raven spoke up over his comlink. Babe, wreck her. I second that. Cheshire joined in. Say, have any of your lovers asked for anal yet? A PP as large as yours would make it quite interesting. Ivy fought the urge to giggle at the look on his face hearing that. Anyway, I think Harley's in her bedroom playing with that new game system she'd gotten. She leaned in and kissed him. Do her good and hard, babe. I want to hear her squeal. Lemon lemon naughty time. It had taken a while for him to shake off the blush from her praise bragging, especially when he caught Ivy just outside the door. She definitely enjoyed what she heard if the way she was fingering herself had been any indication. Not that I'm complaining. He thought, working his way around a billboard. Just not a standard patrol would be a change of pace. Horn cannon. The scream, followed by a snarling shout, made him whirl around in time to see that something ricochet off the wall in a back alley a couple of buildings over. Looks like Murphy heard me. John, something's up nearby. I'm gonna check it out. Be ready in case I need backup. Understood. Be careful, Izuku. Stained teeth bared, the mottled, scaly form of Killer Croc hissed menacingly. Two beady, pale eyes focused almost unblinkingly on his newest target. A small blonde girl with two long lyre-shaped horns sticking up from her head. Additional equinish features called out even more to her metahuman status. Odd end of the road, squirt. Don't worry, I'll be quick. You helped me work up an appetite. The girl, better known as Pony Tsunatori, backed up, shaking from head to toe. Part of her wondered if she should have picked Metropolis instead for her pre-trip vacation. Despite the fact the US was more lenient in regards to public quirk usage, the schools were rather small-scale and tended to be attended by those not interested in hero work or had a quirk that worked more effectively in another line of work. Most hero hopefuls would simply enlist with local hero GRPS like the Justice League, Titans, or Birds of Prey. She decided to go ahead and get a license to be safe. This was supposed to be her 2-week-long vacation before packing up to go stay with her aunt in Japan while she attended High. Now though she'd just been out to buy some items of a personal nature when she'd heard sounds of a scuffle. She hadn't been prepared to see a guy being strangled by some thing over 5 times her size. Or not realizing that it was Killer Croc, the infamous cannibal, until she'd tried to scare him off with a blast of her horn cannon. One had managed to stab into his side, forcing him to let the man go, who quickly ran off as soon as he was free. Unfortunately, it brought his ire on her. The first thing he said still sent chills down her spine. You just cost me breakfast, girl. Guess who gets to replace it? She tried another volley of horns, but he just knocked them away. Faced with the odds against her, and a look around that showed she'd gotten herself in an alley with no way to get around him, she went with her only option. Running. Except, a hungry and irritated Croc proved to be a very determined predator. Out of fear of what her fate be if he caught her, Pony failed to pay a lot of attention to which way she went, only hoping she could lose him. Finding an alley with only one entrance was the last thing she wanted to see now. Especially when the sound of heavy breathing and a dark laugh sounded behind her. Horn cannon! She screamed, firing another set at him, hoping maybe she'd get a decent hit in. Horn cannon, horn cannon. It was this scene that Izuku was met with once he reached the roof edge. His eyes widened when she snatched up a rusty pipe and hurled it at Croc, who simply caught it in his teeth and bit the metal in two. Oh man! It was rusty, but that was still steel, and he didn't even react. Is my armor even strong enough to handle that? Izzy, you okay? Cyborg's voice popped up over the comm. I'm getting a reading that your vitals are going a mile a minute. What's wrong? Killer Croc, he's decided, teenage girl, is on the menu. Izuku gulped when another pipe was thrown, and bit. I know I gotta do something, but I'm not even sure if my suit'll handle it. He's biting straight through steel pipe. Use the power mode. The what? The girls had a feeling you'd run into something like this, so they added a battle configuration for it, but they forgot to tell you. Just give the command phrase. Seriously? That's the command. Blame Beast Boy. He loves the anime. Just hurry. Knowing he didn't have time to argue about it, Izuku took a deep breath and vaulted over the edge of the two-story building. Bankai! Pony felt her eyes sting from tears as she realized there wasn't anything big enough left to throw, and she was too drained to use her quirk anymore. No. All right, time to quit playing around. Feed me. With a roar, Croc lunged, not even bothering to acknowledge the sudden mass of steam and smoke that appeared between them. He couldn't see what was there, but his teeth clamped onto something. Only that it wasn't a little girl or even flesh. As the cloud cleared, Pony could only stare in surprise at the huge black and green metal thing in front of her. Its back was to her, standing as tall as Croc, but she could see the heavy-looking chest plate and shoulders, making her think of a high-tech knight. The limbs were covered in layered plates, steam wafting from between them, and its forearm was firmly wedged in the killer's mouth. Ayuk? Croc growled, gnawing on the metal in confused anger. I'm sorry, sir, but no shirt, no shoes. The heavy bass voice made Pony's very core vibrate in a way she oddly enjoyed while watching the other arm draw back. No service. The fist slammed into the jaw, sending a howl of pain and echoed crack of teeth, forcing Killer Croc to let go. Just in time to get a massive metal boot to the chest. Whoa! She jumped when the new guy looked back at her. You all right? He asked, making her shiver a bit. Words failed her and all she could really do was nod. It's okay, I'm Justice League. Name's Zig, the Adamant Knight. He turned back to face Croc, was spitting out a tooth. Now, if you excuse me, I've got lizard butt to stomp. Zig? Croc groaned. You gotta be kidding me. Instead of Batman, I get Captain PMP? Seriously? Izuku stood there briefly in silence. Right before an engine-like whine echoed from him as he charged straight towards the criminal. Pony Tsunatori then paled while she bore witness to a scene of gratuitous violence that normally required parental supervision. You're reaching the area now, Bruce. John said as Batman came to a screech at the spot he was told Izuku had been last. What the hell is Midoriya thinking? Batman muttered. Facing Killer Croc? Even if he has armor dash. Bim. He nearly hurled a batarang at the window when a pair of large objects landed on the sidewalk beside the Batmobile, cracking the pavement from the impact. One, a familiar-colored metal man, slowly got its feet, revealing what Bruce could swear was Croc. A battered, pummeled and, if the bizarrely peaceful expression and multiple knots forming on his head were any indication, highly concussed Killer Croc. He was missing more than half his teeth, a few patches of scales looked to have been ripped off, his jaw was apparently dislocated, one eye had swollen shut, and his left leg was in a configuration not meant for human limbs. He slowly got out of the car, watching a girl with gazelle horns run up, asking if he was okay. I mean Zig? Oh. Hey, Batman. Izuku looked at him, his armor scratched up, teeth visibly jammed in a few joints, the visor scraped up and several splotches of crimson on it. Is that? He was ready to get the medical kit out. No, it's Croc's. My fist got jammed in his throat for a second. Listen, this is Pony Tsunatori. Could you let her parents know she's okay? Also to call the police to pick this jackass up. He gave a weak kick to the unbroken leg. Pony set a hand on his arm. Yeah. He looked at his foot. I was worried the teeth would get wedged in more if I tried to switch modes. Except Cyborg forgot to mention, power mode had a power supply. Best I can do right now is walk. Right. Batman moved to help him. Come on, let's get you out of here and that armor so we can repair it. I'll contact GCPD to collect Croc and reunite Miss Tsunatori with her parents as soon as you're in, or on the car. Thanks. One more thing, Izuku looked him in the eye. Next time I see Green Lantern, I'm kicking him in the shins. Repeatedly. The shins? Bruce wondered if he really wanted to know. Captain PMP'd out of all the ridiculous that how'd that overgrown handbag even know about that? I find out somebody spread that around. I'm standing here where, just a short while ago, where according to witnesses, the notorious criminal and cannibal Killer Croc received an unmitigated beating at the hands of the Justice League's newest hero, Captain Pi Dash. Oh man, you should have seen it. I was heading to my favorite bar, with the big psycho gets his butt plowed right through the wall. And I dunno how he got so big, but Captain PMP proved he's a BMF. Click. There are clearly some underlying issues for why Captain Dash. Click. Izuku groaned in frustration as he let the remote fall from his hands. It's spreading. Well, you can't say it's not unearned. Started to say from his spot on the sofa, until Izuku gave him the stink eye. Perhaps they'll realize it's a moniker made more in jest, Master Midoriya. Alfred said as he entered the room, wearing a mechanic's coat. I recall when Master D was Robin, several people thought his hero name really was Boy Wonder. We agreed to never mention that. D sing-songed over Izuku snickering. On a more pertinent note, your armor sustained only superficial damage. Unfortunately, neither myself nor Master Bruce know the alloy well enough to attempt any viable restoration. He is currently contacting Raven to see if she and Zatanna can provide assistance. Izuku groaned, remembering how the armor looked once Batman had helped him get out of it. Raven's gonna kill me. I'm sure the more superficial marks will buff out well, Master Midoriya. He held up a pair of pliers that still had one of Croc's teeth. Possible choice for the collection, Master D Dash? No cavities. Besides, she, along with Miss Jinx, commissioned this armor for your protection. She can hardly fault you for it accruing damage while doing its job. That would hardly be rational. Izuku stayed silent, about to facepalm. If this is where a resurgence of your formerly low self-esteem is going to come through with a comment of, she chose me, how rational can she be? Need I remind you that she's far from being the only one to have done so? Also that I have a rolled-up newspaper in my inside jacket pocket for when Ace misbehaves, and your nose is as good a target as his. Yes, sir. Izuku quickly complied. Rough. As if on cue, the jet-black German shepherd looked up from where he was napping and gave Alfred a whining bark of protest. In the Batcave, Bruce brushed off spots where the paint at least. It looked like paint that had chipped away from where teeth and nails had scratched at the armor. They'd already managed to pry out the teeth. Now it was just making necessary repairs. Although, the damage was surprisingly minimal. Given how strong Croc is, that was saying something. Looking at this, Bruce idly wondered if it could take a blow from someone like Bane. Probably explained how Izuku could sound so calm on the way, despite having just tangled with one of Gotham's more dangerous criminals. John? Could you link me up with my mom? I should probably tell her what happened. Yeah, Batman just picked me up. It's a long story, thanks. Bruce looked up. The Batmobile wasn't soundproofed, and since he was keeping the speed down so Izuku didn't slide off the top, the armor currently made him too big to get inside. He didn't have much. Hey, Mom, I'm okay, all things considering. Well, I kinda got into a fight with Killer Croc. Yeah, the cannibal. Well, he was gonna eat a girl. And didn't know if anyone else in the league get there in time. Turns out my armor has a power mode, for when I need to hit hard. The best he did was get a few teeth stuck in the joints, but aside from that, no contest. Say what? No. Come on, not you too. I am not, Captain PMP. No, it's not funny. When I get my hands on the guy responsible. Unfortunately, he had to focus back on the road and missed the rest of the conversation. Heh, that name's going to drive him nuts. He chuckled, getting a pair of needle-nose pliers to do a last go-over to get any remaining teeth. He just started when he heard a familiar whooshing hum behind him. I'd say I have a door, but... He looked back to see Raven and Jinx step out from the glowing black silhouette. We heard. Where is he? Raven said. Upstairs. He's fine, just tired. Croc's the one who got the worst of it. We would have got here sooner, But we had to call Cyborg a ninny for forgetting to mention the time limit on the power. Jinx added, Tamaranian fuel crystals probably weren't the best choice. Was that or asking for a mini lantern battery? Raven replied as she checked over a couple of the claw marks. JRK ruined Izuku's paint job. Azarath Metrian Zinthos. She intoned, having her magic mend the visor before moving to the scratches. This'll take a little while. Sparks flew as a black arc flickered between her fingers and the armor. Need to be sure we don't weaken the metal. Jinx added her own power, making sure the bad luck stayed away. Say, wanna surprise him when we get finished? Clothed or? Well, I am wearing my lucky thong. And this is where I go do something out of earshot. Bruce quickly went to another part of the cave. Izuku tilted his head at the TV show he'd found. Two less than bright-looking guys were beating the tar out of each other with rubber DLDS attached to sword handles. Other guys nearby were almost peeing themselves in laughter. Gotham has weird taste in entertainment. He flicked through a couple more channels, hoping to find something less bizarre, until he caught the sound of someone on the stairs. A look back gave him the sight of a girl, looking a year or two older than him, coming down. As she got closer, he was better able to make out the tights and top of the Batgirl uniform she was wearing, the skin-tight material hugging her lithe frame. It took him a second to match name and face. While that happened, she finally spied him, stopping in her tracks. Hi! He waved slightly, seeing she'd noticed he was there. What amounted to any hint of surprise on her face was quickly replaced with curiosity, evident when she tilted her head to the side. You're Cassandra Cain, right? The new Batgirl. I'm Izuku Mido. He faltered when her eyes widened and she moved closer like a cat chasing its prey, pinning him against the couch with an arm on either side of his head. Midoriya. Cassandra leaned in until they were almost nose to nose, breathing in a little deeper than normal. Batman knows I'm here, if that's the problem. I rode with him, actually. She responded by leaning more, almost nuzzling him, and inhaling deeply against the base of his neck. Izuku went beet red at the action, noticing her chest, while not massive, it was still a respectable size for her frame, pressing up against his. Next thing he knew, she sat in his lap, straddling him. Don't get abner, you just met her. Don't get abner, you just met her, quickly became his new mantra as she began running her hands along some of the scars on his chest. He knew she suffered an even bigger lack of social experience than he ever had, so figured this was just a way she'd worked up to get to know someone new. Raven and the others had to have seen them, but apparently they didn't want to say anything. Izuku shivered a bit as Cassandra slowly traced along one of the older burn marks on his stomach, studying it and a nearby scar like they were telling her a story. Yet I'm not real proud of how I got these. He said, a little embarrassed at the memory. Or he was. That particular memory was blown aside when she suddenly grabbed his head and took him in a searing kiss, her tongue snaking past his lips while he was still processing things. HMMF? Cassandra purred, grinding against him slightly. She held the kiss for a little longer, her tongue flicking around and teasing him, before she pulled away. Without wasting a second, she pulled off her top, revealing BRTs the size of beefsteak tomatoes. Izuku's eyes widened at the sight. Wow, those are as big as Raven's WHWA.ac. He jumped when she started to pull at his sweatpants. Hey, Izuku, we're gonna order pizza. You okay with pepperwo? Jumped when he walked back in. Cass. He ran over. We talked about this. You don't strip Gudurite. He shrieked incoherently, thanks to the taser Cassandra jabbed him with. D-dash. You okay? Izuku called out as the former sidekick fell out in a twitchy heap, then turned his attention back to Cassandra. Where'd you even have that? She tossed it aside and resumed trying to get the sweats off him. Bap. Cassandra nearly fell off him when something swung into her face. It didn't look painful, but it more than startled both boy and girl. Miss Cain, neither the sofa nor the living room is the appropriate location for this. Alfred said sternly, still holding the newspaper he'd just used to bop her nose. Cassandra tried to give him a defiant scowl, but faltered and settled for pouting. Oh man. Thanks, Alfred. Izuku gasped, moving to pull his pants back up. I dunno why dash. That is what we have bedrooms for after all. Cassandra stared at him briefly before her eyes lit up. Alfred, come on. Izuku yelped, suddenly getting dragged to and up the stairs. The man calmly watched the pair until they disappeared at the top. Now alone, he reached for the phone. Hello, Master West. Alfred Pennyworth here to yes, I'm just calling to let you know that you just lost the bet. Alfred grinned at the groaning whine of defeat that followed. Ray. Jinx spoke up, following Raven's spell to another scratch. HM? When do you think that bad luck negation hex I cast on our boy'll wear off? I think will is the more appropriate term, Jinx. Captain PMP? Mitsuki nearly fell off her chair in laughter. Since Izuku was, and she still had to wrap her head around the fact, with the Justice League, Inko had a bit more free time now. So the two women were able to catch up a bit more often, the cafe they were currently enjoying lunch being one such time. She dim and near choked when Inko mentioned him facing off against a monster like Killer Croc, and managed to not only win, but put the man in Arkham's medical wing. Of course, once the shock of that settled, the DM woman hit her with more surprises, namely Izuku finding himself with multiple girlfriends, who were all well aware of each other. Didn't. Katsuki'll be lucky to find one that tolerates being around him with the attitude he's got. The thought. That boy of hers was even more surly after that day with the criminal who had that sludge quirk and the Martian manhunt. She thought he'd be at least a little happy Izuku was getting a chance like that. Instead, however, the brat ranted and raved about how he stole what Katsuki felt he was owed. Croc learned he wasn't fond of that name that the hard way apparently. Inko chuckled, fiddling with the sandwich in front of her. Mitsuki? Yeah. There's that kind of an ulterior reason for why I asked you here. Oh. The blonde leaned in. This I gotta hear. Well, I need your advice on how to ask a certain someone out. You're going back to dating? Mitsuki was caught unaware. Inko was still married, wasn't she? But what about Hisashi? I already called him. We still care about each other, but given how his job keeps him away, we agreed to swap to a more open marriage. Long as we let the other know we've started seeing someone, there's no harm done. Wow, so does he know about Izuku? Yeah. I told him last time he called. Since he hooped and started singing, "Go Izuku go," I'd say he agreed with the idea. Mitsuku snorted into her drink hearing that. He'll never change. So, who's the lucky guy or gal? John's. Inko answered, cheeks turning a brilliant pink. Joe, why does that name sound familiar? Mitsuki frowned in thought. Because that's Martian Manhunter's name? What? Keep it down. Inko chided her, swiftly looking around. Satisfied no one been close enough to hear, she settled back down. The Martian Manhunter? One of the original Justice League members? That John's? I can't help it, we've chatted over the comm system and I've just fallen for him. She sighed, getting a smile normally seen on love-struck schoolgirls. I mean, he's one of the first people to see any potential in Izuku. He has a fun sense of humor, handsome as hell. When we talk, I get this enjoyable sense of calm. And the fact he can shapeshift makes the dreams interesting? You can say that a guy dash. Inko's face turned neon red. Mitsuki. Not sorry. She cackled. But serious, you got it bad, girl. Inko just blushed harder before her friend scooted around to put an arm around her. Well, first thing to do, you wanna ask him over the phone or in person? Phew, talk about an all-night. Jinx stretched as she and Raven followed Bruce out of the Batcave. Raven stifled a yawn. At least the armor's repaired. It'll smell like reptile for a couple days though. Nothing a bit of airing out won't fix. Bruce looked around at where Izuku had been. Where'd he go? A chord of light, cheery humming drew their attention to Cassandra, almost skipping down the stairs. Morning, Cassie. Jinx waved. Cassandra. Bruce groaned, trying to ignore how she was wearing only a yellow shirt that barely went past her panties. Please put some pants on or shorts at least dash. How'd she get Izuku's shirt? Raven asked, looked pointedly at her. How can you tell it's his? He's the only guy I know who's willing to wear a shirt that says pants on it. As if on cue, a tired, disheveled, and wore-out Izuku came staggering out behind Cassandra. His upper body was decorated with hickeys, bite marks, and a few scratches. "What dear?" he groaned. "Well, looks like Wally's just lost the wager." Bruce thought, right before the greenette saw them. "Are a Raven? Jinx." He turned even paler. "I can it least, I hope I can ex dash." "Izuku." Raven cut him off, both girls making their way towards him. "You remember what we said? About?" He wobbled a little before she levitated him slightly with her magic. "We were serious about being cool with you hooking up with girls that get your eye." Jinx patted Cassandra on the shoulder. "Welcome to the club, by the way. Just let us know about it." "Oh." He visibly relaxed. "Think I'm the one who did the eye-catching though, hee. He let out a weak chuckle. "Yeah, I'd say so." Raven traced a couple of the bite marks on his chest. "So, how was he?" Jinx nudged Cassandra. "I'd make a guess, but..." Cassandra stared at her briefly, right before letting out a happy little squee, hopping giddily in place as she did. "I'll take that as a not bad." Principal Nizu sighed contently. "So, I take it we're all ready for next year's crop of students?" The small rodent canine, Marsupio, asked, downing the last of the tea he'd been drinking. Sekijiro shrugged. "More or less, but don't you think it's a little early to be having this meeting? The entrance exam's still over 5 months away. No harm in making sure. Plus, this way we can be sure we have time to adjust for any ideas you or the others might have for the courses. Maybe provided some of us actually bother to keep our classes." Sekijiro glared pointedly at Shota Aizawa, who was currently slouched in an armchair. The tattered-looking man looked like he couldn't be bothered to care. "It's not my fault no one in that class didn't meet Dash. You expelled all 20 on the first day, Aizawa." He cut him off. "They barely even time to get their schedules memorized. Even if you did manage to get them re-enrolled, they only agreed on the basis that none of them had to have you as their teacher in any subject." "He's got a point, Shota." Another baritone voice piped in, belonging to an athletically built blonde, 2 long bangs draping down from either side of his face. "And that's not counting the parents who wanted a piece of you when their kids told them. Remember the woman who had that mantis shrimp quirk? Yeah, he should be glad she just wanted to slap him with those rocks she had for hands." Midnight replied, glancing over at the speaker. And doing a double take at the sight. "TV Tashinori? Been wondering when one of you would notice." The man laughed, causing the whole room to stare in surprise. He wasn't in his fully muscled form, but the skeletal appearance was gone. His narrow, angled face now resembled what he looked like well before his injury. The once sunken, hollow eyes were back to normal, and he wasn't slumping forwards. "There seems to be something different about you." Nizu mused, giving him a once-over. "New haircut? Change in diet?" "Oh yes, I see that when the blazes did you start getting bigger?" As insane as it sounds, I was able to find a medical treatment that worked. Unfortunately, for security reasons, Chio's the only one I can give the details to. On the plus side, though, it's done wonders for my time limit, He laughed at what was apparently a pun none of them got. "Seriously, I can run around in full might more for a good 12 hours now before I gotta take a break." He leaned in towards the others. "And you want to know the best part? I haven't coughed up a drop of blood since the treatment. Not one bit." Meanwhile, Nizu's ears twitched rapidly, indicating that, despite his calm demeanor, his mind was going a mile a minute. By the time Tashinori was done, the mizmash of an animal was smiling in a way that showed he'd realized something that brightened up his day a little. Well, that explains why he of all people would hand-deliver a student application in the middle of the night. Well, we'll certainly have time to celebrate the good news later. For now though, we should get back to the task at hand. I understand we're getting a new exchange student in the applications this semester. Another? Cementos asked. There's a girl from the States that applied, a Pony Tsunatori, but I haven't heard about any others. Well, this one is a tiny bit unique. Nizu took out the application in question, holding it up so they could see the name. Izuku Midoriya. This young man is being sponsored by an unexpected group. Who? The Justice League. What? Aizawa yelled, falling out of his chair with a thud. He's a member too. According to the note Batman left with it, anyway. With that, the room erupted in a cacophony. Snipe's jaw dropped past his mask. Cementos and Midnight were both frozen in shock, and All Might. He was engaged in an epic giggle fit. Well, this year sure isn't going to be boring. Izuku looked at the batarang he'd just been handed, the scythe-shaped wings unfolding into the full weapon. You're going to teach me to throw these? Generally speaking. Bruce picked up another, and with a flick of his wrist, sent it spinning into the chest of a target dummy. Oliver agreed that this'll help in case you still need some range aside from arrows. He nodded his head towards the table covered with batarangs, deactivated sticky bombs, shock darts, and other selections of the man's throwing arsenal. Like with the arrows, don't worry about accuracy with these. Just use them to get a feel for it. Right. He took a moment to get accustomed to the weight, a pound and a half maybe? Taking aim at the torso, he drew back and hurled it. The batarang struck it in the shoulder sideways, and clattered to the floor of the Batcave. More like a frisbee. Bruce spoke up. Let your wrist and elbow do the work. He looked over at the dummy. Good distance throwing it like that, though. Izuku took another batarang and let it fly. It hit and stuck this time for a moment, before falling out. Just in time for the watchtower comm system to beep. I'll get it, Bruce said, heading over to the computer. Those are older ones, so they probably won't stay in anyway. Bruce, is Izuku still there? John's face appeared on the screen. Instead of his usual stoic expression, he looked like a guy who was trying to figure out the best way to ask something. Something wrong? No, it's just Inko asked me out. Do was. There was a loud ping as a batarang bounced off a stalagmite point 20 feet behind him. While not quite how I'd phrase it, I'm curious as well. Bruce grinned in mild amusement. My mom? Seriously? Izuku ran over. Yes, and I just wanted to be sure you were okay with it. You see, back on Mars, when you wanted to ask a lady out, it was customary to ask her oldest male relative, father, brother, so and toc if they were okay with you dating her. Pretty much the same if a lady wanted to ask a guy out, ask his oldest female relative. It was more out of politeness than actual permission. John explained. Just felt like the right thing to do. Wow. Izuku chuckled weakly. Kinda surreal that Mom had told me she and my dad were planning to make their marriage a more open one. And to be honest, I don't even know if I'd recognize the guy since he's been away so long. He chuckled again. And now my mom is wanting to go out with one of my coworkers. Never thought I'd use that collection of words in the same sentence. So? Just don't let her near any wine. She tries to do kabuki when she gets drunk. Both Bruce and John looked his way. That's definitely a story for poker night. The billionaire commented. Out of curiosity, how did? Izuku started. Actually, it was about an hour ago. Jaejeon? Inko popped up on the monitor. Monitor? Really, John? Bruce groaned. Mrs. Inko. He replied, seeing the look she gave him. Izuku isn't currently dash. Hi, Mrs. M. Himiko squeed, tackling him slightly. If you're looking for Zukuin, he's not up here right now. Hello, Himiko. The woman smiled a bit. Actually, I wanted to talk to John. I'm in private, please. Ooh, okay. She chirped. Ivy's been showing me how to make what she calls hemoglobin tablets to help keep my quirk from going wonky again. She and Batman think they'll get it back to a normal state eventually. She promptly skipped off. Well, she's certainly looking better. Inko said. Quite. It's a bit of a miracle Izuku found her before it became irreversible. He looked back to see her getting out of earshot. So, you wanted to talk? Yes, boy, that I'm not really sure how to say this without sounding like a total goober, but... She took a deep breath. Will I go out with him? You go out to you, oh crud. Inko, are you asking me out? He smiled. To be honest, you're broadcasting it like a tornado siren. That loud, huh? She blushed. I mean that I'm still married, but because my husband lives and works out of the country, we agreed to an open relationship, but this is the first time I've really tried this. I'd love to. Once she managed to recover from the ensuing bout of giddiness, we agreed to go out this weekend. He finished. We figured something simple like a picnic would be a good start. Just remember, no wine. Izuku said, getting a surprisingly respectful, if mainly in jest, salute before the connection closed. It was then he had a moment of dread. Oh crap, what if the paparazzi find out? Or some of Jonas' more rabid fans? I believe you have nothing to fret, Master Midoriya. Alfred said, coming down with a tray. I believe Manhunter has taken that into account and will most likely escort her to the Watchtower's aquacultural area for their rendezvous. Well, that's a relief. View's actually pretty nice there. Alfred sat the tray down, revealing a platter of sandwiches. Speaking of parents, Miss Kara called from the Clark farm. She says it's time to introduce you to Ma and Pa. The Batcave was dead silent until explains why Kent suddenly volunteered to go help with that salvage operation at Alpha Centauri. Superman, you chicken, Izuku muttered, when the thought finally sunk in. Nizu looked up from his paperwork when he heard his door open. All Might, come in. Cementos said you were hoping to talk with me about something. Tashinori replied, taking an offered seat. Yes, actually, mostly an eagerness to satisfy a question I've had for most of the day. Nizu gave his best, inquisitive look. What's it like up on the watchtower? Pardon? When you went to get healed. The mouse-bear-dog thing gave him a knowing smile. That vaunted Amazonian tech, I'm guessing. He chuckled at the nervous look on All Might's face. Don't worry, Toshi, he said jovially. Your secret's safe with me. And I figured it out myself, so you haven't broken your promise. Although, done wonders? Really? Sounded funnier in my head. All Might admitted. Well, it was pretty nice. Heck of a view, and while I admittedly don't quite agree with some of their tactics or personal ideologies, they're pretty pleasant to be around.